and the group that did not have vitamin D, right? So this is the scientific process playing out right in front of us. It's the unknowns. It's the we don't know until we know more. And that's why you also see nutrition or supplement changes or exercise changes that say eggs are good for you one day, and then 2 years later, eggs are bad for you, or meat is good for you one time, and next thing you know, only eat meat and you're on a carnivore diet, right? And so you hear all these back and forth changes. A lot of it is because the human body, as beautiful as it is, it's that much more intricate. And then when we consider all of the other factors that influence our health, our community, our environment, the air quality, the water that we have to drink, how we think, how we move, how we sleep, how we feel, the people that we have close to us, right? If I'm isolated throughout COVID-19 by myself, I'm not gonna have as great as health as maybe I have a daughter, I have a 7-year-old, right? So I have someone to love and be with, and there is that emotional healing that comes from that as well. And so there isn't a one-stop shop pill or thing that you can do to really protect. So my recommendations when I'm working with people who are really trying to achieve better health, go back to the very basics. Is your food coming from whole food sources, or is it pre-processed, pre-packaged? And what can we do to go back to and even rice and beans. Rice and beans get demonized. I'm half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, and that is all I grew up on. That was breakfast, lunch, and dinner, rice and beans. You don't question that. And that's okay, that's a whole food, right? Between the two, you have certain fats, you have certain proteins, you have certain carbohydrates. It wasn't prepackaged, My mom could have purchased, prepackaged, microwavable rice packets, but she purchased regular rice, and she cooked it that way. So what can we do to go back to basic nutrition? What can we do to go back to basic exercise? Can I move? Okay, can I go for a walk? Can I do 10 minutes after every meal? 10 minutes of exercise and just walking, just regular brisk walking after a meal helps reduce your blood sugar levels and helps you process the food that you just ate. And that's it, right? So, and if you can't go for a walk, it's raining outside, maybe it's not a good environment to go walking in, you live by a freeway or a major road and that's not okay, can you dance, right? We just had the moms up here earlier who were absolutely killing it. Can you do 10 minutes of simple dance in your living room, put on some great music and just move for a little bit? That is going to be so helpful. And the more that you can do that day in and day out, that's going to benefit you long term. And so it doesn't need to be some crazy intense workout. You don't have to go join a CrossFit gym and do this one thing, but can you incorporate simple, effective measures that the science backs up over and over and over again that does support and help your overall health and well-being? And so for me, it's get back to the basics of nutrition, get back to the basics in movement, connect with other people, and that's going to help stimulate your path towards health and managing what you can in the simplest ways that I can probably say that.
Okay, I can dovetail off of those. I love what I'm hearing from Dr. Dharma and Dr. Morales, and it's so the truth that I agree with. I mean, number one is that we are learning, the medical practitioners are learning, and the other is that if we do these basics, we can do extremely well, and it really doesn't have to be so hard as we learn the basics. Now, the part about us learning, when all of this started, it was absolutely crazy. Now, I've mentioned that I'm from the Northeast, I'm from New Jersey, and we were hit in a different way. We were hit probably earlier, and so we had to deal with this. Now, the other part of the equation is that I work in the hospital, and so you're going to hear that persuasion. And now, when all of this first started, I mean, healthcare, it really sets a standard in a way. Traditionally, right? You go into a place that's kind of sterile, it's really clean, people move fast, I mean, healthcare is really pretty sterile. All of a sudden, COVID came, and we didn't have enough PPE. What are you saying? I mean, really, Now, all of a sudden, they're saying, well, you have to use your mask all day long, when usually you'd be using it between patients. You put one on, you take that off, and then you throw that away. You go see somebody else, you use another mask. The N95s that you see, I see a KN95 here too, but those N95s, we would get fitted for those, and then you would just wear that size only. nobody even cares about that these days because we're so nobody's talking about the mask that fits like you actually get fitted for a mask before. I'm talking about 20 years of practice. But now, we've learned in such a way that now, and when I say we've learned also, I have to share that if you're in the hospital and you see like a war zone, I've been working in the hospital for 20 years, it looks like a war zone in the hospital. I'm talking about like in March and April and May, just bodies, people laying on their stomachs that are intubated, things I've never seen in my career. Um, Also, people having percussion on ICU beds, just incredible situations. But one thing that impressed me was there'd be a patient who's getting dialysis, and a nurse is taking care of the patient. Now, when I go and see a patient with known COVID, I'm almost going to be holding my breath in there. I'm going to have an N95 on. I'm going to have a surgical mask on. I'm going to be gowned up, goggles, and everything. I go in there, take care of business, go out. There's a dialysis nurse who's still sitting there. And I'm like, how long are you going to sit in there? She's like, oh, we have to. Dialysis can take, you're probably aware, several hours, 3, 4 hours. And the nurse is really supposed to sit in the room with the door closed. They can come out and, drink and stuff like that. The point is that when you have protection like masks and what's been recommended, these basics, it really works. And we're not just talking about people that are coughing and sneezing. We're talking about that for sure, but we're talking about people with active, known, I tested positive for COVID 2-3 times. I have all of the symptoms. I'm floridly sick with COVID, and you're in a room with them, with a small room with the door closed. And this is the standard of care, but people are not generally getting sick when they're following the guidelines. So I really want to impress upon you that all of these things that we're recommending, they absolutely work. Distance works, masks work, and cleanliness work, and keeping moving. These basics work.
Awesome. So I want to keep the conversation moving by asking, we have 2 more questions for the doctors panel, and then we're going to transition to our next panel. This is an interactive conference. Like I said, we have people on Zoom. I'm actually, if you see me on my phone, this is what I'm doing. I'm actually communicating back and forth with Zoom. This is a new world for us. It's a whole new way of being. I've actually taken pictures, taken videos, and listened to that conversation at the same time. And then I've been answering some questions. So I just want to ask Josh over there, our AV guy. We also want to give much respect to Ninja Pro AV team for being here and putting this conference together with us. We have another doctor who is in the chat room. I'm not sure if we can get her on screen, Dr. Brown Manning. If so, then we can bring her up. The Zoom, there we go. Hey, Zoom. Hi, y'all. This is so cool.
Hello.
It's so cool that I just want to take a picture. Hi, Cent.
Hey, y'all, how are you?
Good, guys. This is one of my college classmates. This is a whole new world, is it not? Yeah. So just be in amazement with me that we have to do business like this now. This is Dr. Cynthia Brown Manning. She is a long-term, over 30-year friend of mine. She practices in Louisiana. She was actually slated to be here today on site with us, but she got called on call during a flood warning and some of the other things, protocols that they have at her hospital. So we are certainly glad to have you on Zoom, as we do have a couple of other folks who are presenters. I see Castley Johnson up there, who's coming up next in the business, and Brother Reginald Muhammad. So we have a question for you, Dr. Brown Manning, before we actually go to question number 2. We just wanted to know, in Louisiana, what your current updates on COVID-19 are, if you can talk about that briefly, and what kind of prevention tools you're doing for your patients in Louisiana.
And I apologize, I am computer literate this morning. I can't make my camera come on, but our numbers are still going up. In Louisiana, we are still using our mask every day. And a lot of backlash with using masks in our community still, but still trying to incorporate persons with education regarding that. We've reopened our schools. We've moved to phase 3, and people are still pretty frustrated with that. But it's still overwhelming for everybody. As your brother was speaking earlier, We were hit as hard as New York, not as hard as New York, but pretty significantly in our state, and still having some issues. The numbers did decrease when we went back to phase two, or stayed in phase two for as long as we did. But now that things have opened back up, and people have still been more negative about the use of masks and not completely understanding why it's so important, it has given us an enormous amount of difficulty with our younger population, not our older population with the medical illnesses, but our younger population has a lot of difficulty understanding that the importance of using masks and protecting our older generation.
Awesome. So let's go on to the second question, and we'll let them pepper around. We want to know, because this discussion is always on the news every single day, people are getting tired of it, and we really, anybody that is a person of color in America right now wants to know questions about why communities of color are being hit so hard. And so our second question is, how can communities of color begin to strengthen themselves and their families with more information and practices that strengthen their immune system in a preventive way? Why are communities of color getting hit so hard, and what can we do about it?
So that's, I think, a really good question, and very, I think we all need to start to look at that with open eyes instead of pretending like it's not real, because communities of color have really been hit harder, and more hospitalizations, higher increased death rates. And we have a term in medicine called social determinants of health. And it's something that we don't talk about, but is just now coming up to the forefront, so that we can educate people that there is inequality not only in the streets, and not only with the issues at hand with police, and just there's so much equality. And unfortunately, the truth be told, it also trickles down, which breaks my heart to when you are a provider and your goal is to help people, then to see that there is such a huge gaping disparity in even pregnant mortality rates in Texas in African Americans. It's tragic. And so what are social determinants of health, and how can we make a difference? Well, the first step is actually educating people in what those are. And they're very soft factors that are hard to objectively measure and change, where when we can give you a pill, we can say, okay, we gave you this dose of pill, and then this made a difference, and so if you take this pill, you will do better. And as Dr. Morales was suggesting, it also, the pill doesn't work the same on white people as it does on black people. You can't assume that just because it worked for one person, it's going to work for another whole race of people. And in addition, I think her points were well taken. Just because it worked in one country doesn't mean it's going to work in another. So to hone it in to really help you understand what social determinants of health are, they start at a core issues with trust, So when a race of people have a bad relationship with a system, and I mean, I don't want to go into Tuskegee or all of the other things that have gone on that have led to that mistrust, okay? So there's a fundamental, layer of mistrust. Then there's a layer of whether your family, did they go to doctors? Did they not go to doctors? Do you have a relationship with a doctor? I have so many patients who have great health care and yet have not been to a physician. So that lack of a relationship with someone that you see as like yourself, right? And that goes back to trust. So if you don't see people who are minorities in professions that are there to help you, you're likely not to utilize those avenues, right? And it keeps going because, so we talk about number one is a lack of utilization. Okay, so that's a social determinant of health. We talk about the disparities of, African Americans and minorities, Hispanics and such, are out in the front lines. So then, when we blame them for having a higher incidence, is it not because they didn't have the PPE and they were forced to be essential workers? In addition, because of that first layer, you have the next layer of disparities, which is lack of utilization. So not only did you not engage in a form of health with somebody who had a trusting relationship, but then you chose not to utilize the modalities that were available. And those are big words just to say that when I asked you to take a flu shot, you said, hell no, And so, I mean, truly, I go through this every day, 20 times a day, and I have a large patient panel of, that's very diverse. And so while I will not have to have a long conversation with someone whose family always gets the flu shot and they just come in and they get it, it is so much more time consuming to try to engage someone who is a minority who has very set beliefs on vaccinations. And me and Laura Amy have already had this discussion. And so then when you then again see that there is a higher incidence of disease and death related to not utilizing those modalities, then whose fault is it? And I struggle with that because, although I offered it and I tried to prevent disease and you had an opportunity, did I do enough? And then was it your fault that you chose not to do it because of all of these barriers, Then comes those just financial barriers, right? And so being able to afford medicine, and people don't tell us. And last but not least is like transportation. And these seem very simple. But for example, I had a patient who is high risk. So I want to make sure we answer the specific questions, like why is it that there is such a disparity in healthcare when it comes to minorities? And those social determinants of health lead to part of the disparity. And so in every case, whether it's COVID or diabetes, so when you have all of that, then you have more disease in minority patients, right? You have more diabetes, more hypertension, more obesity, and then those then set you up to be higher risk. So it's this huge domino that just keeps pounding one after another. And where do you stop the domino so that you can't keep pushing those rest of those pieces over? And so when you think about patients, there tends to be this blame. Doctors blame patients for, you didn't wear the mask. That's why you got the disease. You didn't get your flu shot. That's why you ended up dying in the hospital because you chose not to. But is it really you, or is it that we didn't do a good enough job of educating and of participating and then of looking at? So when patients sometimes are knee-jerk reaction when they're not having good outcomes, right? Their blood pressure is high. Oh, you didn't take the medicine, right? Well, why didn't you take the medicine? Oh, because you couldn't afford the medicine. Well, why didn't you tell me you couldn't afford it? Oh, because I didn't ask. And so then what do? We add another medicine because I didn't ask you whether you were even taking that medicine and you didn't tell me. So that communication it was lost, and that ability to make effective change for you was left at the wayside. And so I feel like, and we know this, and we are now actively studying to try to make a difference in social determinants of health. It's a really new area of medicine. And, Black lives matter in more than just on the street. They matter when you are in a relationship with your doctor. And I would encourage you to have an open, trusting relationship with your physician. And I would encourage you to get a doctor, because they can guide you and lead you in ways both emotionally, mentally, physically, to help protect yourself. And so I think that is the beginning to make a difference in the ripple effect, because sometimes if you're trying to change a big system, I mean, how do you change a system, right? But you start with one person at a time. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is like work individually with my patients to try to help change their behaviors, but by understanding that these factors contribute to their decision making and the reason that they don't get the best health care. So I think
That's good. And I want to just hop in real quick before we go to Dr. Morales, because we want to know, based on that, what are some of the things that can be preventive based on all those social determinants? What are some things that they can do to try to prevent the diabetes, the hypertension, those things that we know communities of color have? We also know that it is in the nutrition. We know that it is in the nutritional practices, what they do at home and what's passed down in the lineage. So what are some of the things that you can suggest, that people do preventively so that we don't have this, we can't say COVID came and started all of that when you had some things in you already, so.
First thing I want to mention, before I get into that, I definitely want to get into that. There is higher risk amongst the Black community for diabetes, for hypertension, for cardiovascular disease. Nutrition, exercise, all of that matters, but underlying something that stimulates, that starts a little bit of this domino effect, is the systemic oppression that's being faced by your community. Like, that's there. And, to negate that exists, to try to think that it's just diet and exercise, that this is going to be enough, that's going to remove the strain and stress and pressure that you feel day in and day out, that causes inflammation, not inflammation that you think of like when something swells and it's big and red, but you have microinflammation in your body. These things influence and affect how your heart functions, influence and affects your circulation. That stress can't easily be measured, but it's in there, and it's something that you experience from the moment you are conceived through the day you die. And epigenetically, have you guys heard that term before, epigenetics?
Can you explain it, epigenetics?
Yeah. So epigenetics, so you all probably know genetics, right? You're given genes from your mom, you're given genes from your dad, and this is who you are, okay? And maybe mom and dad had diabetes, or they had some other genetic condition, and so therefore you are more at risk of having that as well. There's something else called epigenetics, okay? And epigenetics means that your genetics can be influenced. So think of them like a little light switch. You can turn on or turn off, or like a dimmer, right? You can increase or decrease how much that gene is going to play a role in your specific life. And all of that is influenced by, again, the air you breathe, the stress you have, the people you're with, the things you eat, the things you don't eat, how you move, how you don't move, the health care that you have access to, that you don't have access to, et cetera. All of that changes and influences things. And epigenetically, stress. So if I am a depressed, anxious, I don't have a good job, I don't have a good support system, and I'm pregnant, epigenetically, that is something that's influencing my eggs. That's something that's influencing those genes. That's something that's going to influence my child and how she comes into the world. She's going to be just a little bit more less likely to handle stress as well, a little less likely to handle something else, right? Now, if you imagine this, repeat it over and over again, and the amount of oppression and racism and the battles that your communities have had to face, and specifically saying Black community here, Hispanics we've had our own issues as well, but that's not my focus. My focus right now is for you.
We are talking about communities of color, so we do mean the larger.
So when you think about everything you face, right, at your job, at the grocery store, walking down the street, whatever it be, that stress, that thing, that's having an influence on you. And we have, and I can speak to this from the prenatal world, because I work with a company called Evidence-Based Birth, and I also work with a nonprofit that is starting up here in Dallas called House of Akoa, and we are working with mental health, trying to provide low to no cost mental health services, specifically more to the prenatal community, but also their families, because we understand that these things influence one another. And so when I speak to this, know that that's kind of more my background here. And so there are studies out there that show, when we talk about the maternal and infant mortality rates. So she mentioned the mortality rates for women in Texas are horrible. And they are, right? So if I were to give birth in Dallas, in Texas, my likelihood of not being able to, survive that because of a stroke or a clot or something happens, mismanagement in the system, whatever it be, is higher for me as a person of color, would be higher for you as someone who's black than someone who's white. And that's not just in Texas, that is nationwide. We have just disgusting, honestly, numbers for our infant and maternal mortality rates. So they have looked at this to try to see why. What is the difference, right? And so sometimes people go, well, there's more blood pressure, there's more heart disease, there's more of these things, and then that puts you at risk. And that's very much true, but there have been some studies that look at it a step further. Why is there more of that? And what they discovered is that the reason there's more of that is because of the systemic oppression, this constant stressful situation that has been generation after generation. And we talk about slavery or segregation as if it was that long ago. It wasn't, right? Ruby Bridges is still alive, and she was one of the first black women who were able to go into a school of whites, and the amount of hate that she received for what she did as a child, just trying to get an education, epigenetically puts a stress on her, right? Puts her at higher risk for blood pressure, just in that in itself. So having the cleanest diet in the world and having the best exercise program in the world still doesn't negate what's happening in our communities. And so I think we have to, when we talk healthcare can't just be diet, exercise, supplements, medicine. It has to be an everything thing. It has to be, do they have access to a refrigerator to keep their insulin cold? Can they go to the pharmacy? Do they have transportation to get to a doctor? If they don't, why? And what have we done for these communities, these lower income communities, oftentimes the incomes or the communities of people of color? What have we done and what have we caused, and why are they there to begin with? And the system, it set it up that way. And it's that way for what it is. So what we can do now, right, we can't change that. We can't change where we're living. We can't change where we're at. My sister does construction work, and she builds apartments. And she is, that is what she does in front line. So she's constantly exposed, and they never shut down throughout COVID. Like, she was working long days every single day trying to build apartments because people need apartments. And so they're out there and she's exposed, and I can't change that. I can't change the community she's in. I can't change global climates right now, but diet. And again, I go back to the basics. Can you go back to eating unprocessed foods? Can you go back to drinking water instead of orange juice? Okay, you wanna have orange juice. Can you get water and squeeze some orange juice? Make your own orange juice. That way you're not adding in all the extra sugars, right? All the things that we know that are going to put you at higher risk for hypertension and diabetes and heart disease. Can you just, can you consider exercising certain ways? And it doesn't have to be crazy amounts of exercise. Dancing is exercise. A walk around the block is exercise, right? These are the things day in and day out that are going to help with that. When it comes to supplementation, I struggle a lot with this because if you are consuming a diet that has whole foods, that revolves around eating unprocessed, non-packaged, quality fruits, vegetables, meats, proteins, carbs, fiber, your greens, you'll usually get what your body needs and then some. Like, there are so many things in these foods that science hasn't even discovered the benefits for. We're like slowly discovering more and more and more. And so if you eat those foods, you're gonna get so much benefit from it. If you're taking a supplement, you're only getting that nutrient, or maybe if it's a multivitamin, you're getting just those. You're not getting the benefit of how the whole foods themselves actually work and are synergistically more powerful as a whole food than if we isolate them out. And so you can supplement, but if you're eating a really good diet, for the most part, you don't need to spend the extra money here. I would much rather you spend the extra money and buy yourself some cleaner food, even if it's just adding spinach to, you know, whatever it is. And so, you know, my mom's still rice and beans, and I still have rice and beans, but now I do rice and beans, and I do that on a bed of spinach, right? Or I add a different vegetable, or I do something else different to it. So I still stay true to my culture and what I grew up eating and what I love, right? And there's a comfort to that, and I can maintain that, and that's big, right? Because if you're trying to go on a diet that you don't love and enjoy, you're not going to stick to that. It's just not going to happen.
Let me ask a question then.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to ask a question and bridge into the last topic. We're going to go, just for the people who are Zooming in, we are going to go about 5 or 10 more minutes over because we started about 5 or 10 late, just letting everybody get in Zoom and making sure that we were set up correctly. But I want to get Dr. Brown Manning and Dr. Hubbard in on this same question and bridge into the third question by saying, Dr. Dharma mentioned something about people basically just establishing a relationship with a medical provider, which I think is extremely important, just because we have so much different things, like you said, social, economic factors, all that stuff. People not all the time have a doctor that they know or trust or that they go to, even if they have good insurance, which is one of Dr. Dharma's points. So what I like to say a lot of times when I'm having conversations with people, things are what they are over time. I use that formula for everything. A good relationship is a good relationship based on who that person is over time. A good friendship is a good friendship based on who that friend is over time. Do y'all agree or no? Same thing with nutrition, right? Nutrition is, was that you, Hakeem? Who was that said that? So good nutrition is good nutrition over time, something that does well for your body over time. So based on that, what Dr. Morales is saying is that there are some things that we need to understand about the social economics of it all and what people and communities of color are experiencing here in this society, which is why we have the State of the Black Race Conference. And with that being said, there are some things that people can start in regard to baby steps, like you said, with nutrition. There are some things that I know Dr. Hubbard deals with in regard to neurology and what you tell people. I know you have the winner's circle and the celebrations that you have around people making good improvements. And so that is wed into your practice. That is something, maybe something that you can talk about. And I want Dr. Brown Manning to chat about some of those prevention tools. And the last question would be, what are some of the other things that you think people can do? Physical health, mental, emotional health, spiritual health, hobbies and joys of living practices that people can incorporate that might help them, you know, not have to deal with some of those things that are historically people of color, you know, like celebrating the fact that your numbers are low with a doctor, you know, celebrating the fact that your numbers are low with a community of people, or going to take a dance class with your doctor, because this one right here dances. She dances all the time and she's always active. If y'all haven't seen her page, we're going to shout out each one of their pages and their social media handles so that you can follow them and get to know them, because these doctors might be ones that you might want to follow. I know all of them over time, and I know what they do over time. And so I think the relationship is very important in regard to what people do over time and how they get better at what they're going to do. That being said, we want to get Dr. Hubbard in on this from the prevention side, because I know you deal with strokes and cardiac and all that stuff, and then we'll let Dr. Brown Manning answer that same question.
Okay, is it the same question that we were talking about just now?
So no,
what
we're going
set
to
us
go.
up?
We're going to go to a
different
specific practice, because
Oh.
I think they pretty much covered. Dr. Dharma outlined basically like some of the factors that might happen why people don't don't improve, because they may just have generational things that they've done, generational habits that they've had nutritionally. Dr. Morales talked about the socioeconomic factors that are there and some of the things that might be preventing them from like grabbing the better food or the whole foods and things like that. So where we're going now is one of the specific practices that I know you have. Maybe talk about the winner's circle and what you do with your patients when they do make improvements.
Okay, I'll see if I can tie all that in. You know, I have to say that I'm really impressed hearing my colleagues and how they're describing, they're given the answer to these questions that are very complete, very comprehensive. You know, I mean, I hope that everybody hears those answers. You know, I mean, Dr. Dharma described, we have a system. The system is why we're set up to get COVID. We have a system, and that system has several different components: education, economic, our environment, our social community setup, and our healthcare. So those are them. I'm just summarizing it because she really explained them really well. We have a system that's set up, and we don't think about it all the time, but we're living it. And Dr. Morales says, because of this system and how it's affecting us, we're inflamed. It's painful, and we're like, ouch, And she did it not only on a macro level, but also microscopic and chemical. And, beyond that, that's complicated, That's how we started off. Dr. Dharma said, there's no real short answer. Afterwards, I was thinking, well, maybe we can just eat more cucumbers, But that's how I started, strangely enough. It sounds ridiculous, but when I grew up, and when I moved to Florida, the eggs didn't taste that way, and I didn't know why. And then once I got to, I was like 22 years old, just out of college, and I started making my own breakfast. One day I fried some bacon, and then I didn't feel like using another pan, and then I cracked some eggs and put them in that pan. So I had these eggs from my childhood, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm visiting both grandmothers right now. And like Dr. Morales said, it was very comforting, and I knew I couldn't do that, but for so long. Maybe just a couple more times. But, after a while, it became clear that I needed to make some adjustments. And my first adjustment, vegetables, more raw vegetables. And so I started off with, because I wanted to deal with one of these determinants before I even knew I was dealing with a determinant, But I still have to change from there. I would learn that we need to have a lot of fresh vegetables. Now I look at my kids and they have no idea where I've come from because they're eating so many vegetables in so many ways, and they have no idea the benefits that they're getting. The system that they have is entirely different. With regard my overall approach, being more health focused, it started with a patient, and I would ask, can you tell me about your health conditions? Now we're taught to take histories in a different way. Can you tell me about your medical problems? But I stopped doing that because I would ask somebody, oh yeah, let me tell you. I have diabetes, I have this, I have that, and it seemed like I was sitting there and writing and taking notes, and it almost seemed like they were bragging, with their health conditions that they had. And so, I said, I'm going to ask that question differently because we want to address these problems and we want to acknowledge that they exist so we can deal with them. But we don't want to celebrate them. We want to celebrate where we're going. Let's talk about them as, first of all, health conditions. And let's talk about and celebrate every adjustment that we make toward the goal of health. And rather than look at them as people as just pure patients, I started to look at people as just, humanity, as people that have an interest in doing well just like I do. So I gradually shifted in how I talk to people. And then sooner or later, people started looking at me and saying, they felt less judged, first of all, because I'm not looking at them as a cancer patient. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But instead, I'm looking at them as somebody who has a desire to be as healthy as they possibly can. So that's my overall.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Dr. Brown Manning, I know you're still listening and with us still because I can see you on the Zoom. Do you have any thoughts on different things that you can suggest for people to have a balance between the mental, emotional, spiritual, and maybe just personal hobbies? Like what kinds of things do you do? And I'm just going to ask each one of you that same question as we close this panel. What kinds of things do you do for yourself to stay balanced during COVID, to make sure that you're practicing some of the things that we're offering, in terms of suggestions for other people?
To stay faithfully focused, decide what your spiritual inner balance is, because you have to have something that you believe in. As Dr. Hubbard said, he decided what was important, whether it's how things taste for you, how things feel for you. What is important during this time is how things stay balanced for you, because when we're isolated, we feel very alone, but you are not alone, and you have to find a way to stay balanced in a world of chaos. So you have to find what your central core is and what makes your core feel more holistically balanced, spiritually, emotionally, physically, and even financially in a world where it's really chaotic, where there are lots of different noises in the world. You have to find central peace, and that balance is important. Yoga, meditation, prayer, and wherever your faith is where you have to stay balanced.
Awesome. What kind of things do you do, Dr. Dharma, to stay balanced?
Well, I do this Afro-Brazilian martial art called capoeira, and then I do African dance. So I think laughter and fun and feeling and learning new things, I'm going to be here tomorrow, keeps you young and engaged. But what I would just say is your points on stress. And as a culture, I love that Facebook one, like your African American friends, they're tired, they're exhausted. And what I would say to my brothers and sisters is that to get through this period, you have to take care of yourself. And I want to say a word that sometimes sounds bad, but I want you to be selfish. I want you to take care of yourself and be selfish. And the way I do that is I take time to exercise, and it can be in any way. It doesn't have to be formulated. You don't have to do a dance class. But if you will be selfish and you will take care of yourself, you will find that you will have less stress. Because what do? We always say yes to everyone else and not yes to you first. If you go out in nature and you just do a walk. I mean, I think people underappreciate nature. I know I did until recently, when it forced me to not be in rooms with people, but I had to then find myself. And when I was outside, I all of a sudden felt at peace. And I would ask you to just take the time to decrease your stress level, to take care of yourself, and to find nature and walking. I think that would really make a big difference. Specifically when we're talking about COVID, you're not going to get it from being outside, And I saw pictures of you in the garden and all those things when, you're creating and cultivating and nurturing your soul and your mind and your spirit. And I think it's interesting how all of us here in this panel, we're not being very scientific and talking about, how it combines to a certain receptor, the ACE, and how to prevent it from replicating, or what are the oh God, HCQ. Thank you, Jesus, for not asking or talking about that. So grateful for that moment. But I think it's, if you see the tone of what they have brought together for you to motivate you and to really give you, if you've listened, things that you can do when you leave today to make a difference in your life.
Do all those things. To add to it, so that way I'm not repeating myself or repeating Dr. Dharma. With that, find something that you're passionate about, right? If we're going to talk about stress, and especially during times of COVID, a lot of us are feeling really lonely. What are you passionate about? And do something with that. I am passionate, never-ending passion, can't stop my passion here, about helping break generational chains for my family, for my culture. My family, again, we're Hispanic, so it's diabetes, obesity, it's hypertension, it's a lot of glaucoma issues. That is just what my family experiences, and that's what you're gonna have too, Vanessa, right? That's just what I always heard, and that's just, you can't change that. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to see, no, Mom, I'm going to change that. And we're going to change this, and we're going to see what we can do, and what can I do to help those who are suffering from it, and what can I do to help others prevent it? What can I do to keep my daughter from ever having to experience the things that I had to experience, that my parents had to experience, and so forth. And so I am passionate about health education, and I do that as an educator. I have some of my interns right here. You guys see in the nice white coats. They'll be available to take your blood pressures after this. I'm passionate about it through my education, so my line of work. I have been very fortunate to make my line of work my passion, and I know not everyone can do that. But if you can't do that, can you get involved with an organization that does something you are passionate about? And then from there, that allows connection. Again, I'm a part of different, boards that help support the missions, the things that I'm passionate about, and that gets me connection. That gives me community, that gives me people to talk to and connect with. It makes me feel good. It reduces my stress. If we're gonna get scientific here, all the feel-good hormones, without getting too scientific, all the feel-good hormones, the stuff that produces in your brain that's healing and great and anti-inflammatory, supporting organizations, supporting people like you and things like this, that is how I take care of my health and, beyond all the other things. So if you can do one thing and you don't want to change your diet and you don't want to exercise, and I hate dancing, I'm so sorry for you if you do, get involved, right? And I think right now we this peaking time where we need more people to be involved. We need more people in this community to be out there and get involved and make a change. And so that would be my recommendation. Find what you're passionate about and find other people who are also passionate about that and go do that. And if they're not out there, make it, create it, start it, be the person and find other people that would support you and make it happen. I know you've done a lot of that. And so make it happen. If it's not existent, make it. And there's nonprofits, and there's people out there who want to support you, who want to get you going, who want to support those dreams. So do that, and that will do wonders for your health, mental health, physical health, and so forth.
Thank you. And then Dr. Hubbard, how about you? What do you do for balance besides buying a boat and a motorcycle? Those are fun things. I'm just saying, like I watch all of you all on Facebook and all the fun things that you're doing, the hiking, and Dr. Morales has a page that she does with her daughter with cooking, and my brother, he actually does ride his motorcycle and his boat, and I think those are things that are nourishing. So share some of those things with us.
Okay, so that's funny. You chose the things I was definitely not going to say. Well, let's see. I go out on my boat. That's. But
it might be relieving. Is it relieving?
That's obviously a sister, right? I mean, who else would do that? So she's obviously my sister. Well, it is relieving. But what keeps me up at night and what wakes me up in the morning is this idea of solving problems. I love solving problems, and I just live for it. I'm passionate for it, like what my colleagues are describing here. And I'm especially passionate about problem solving when it comes to the disempowered, and that's what we're talking about. But the disempowered, they tend to be groups that I'm with, and so I'm just going to speak about another group that I'm with just to exemplify. I've seen several physicians that lost their jobs and all sorts of weird things that happen working for health systems. Now, you don't usually think of physicians as being disempowered, right? But on the other hand, you've seen where healthcare practitioners have actually been pushed aside, and quieted, like, go shut up and sit down. Now, and it even made me wonder myself, do I know my colleagues like I thought, So once I saw an example of this, I started thinking, what can I do? And developed a platform. It's called HAdvisor.com. And basically, it's a TripAdvisor for healthcare practitioners, primarily for physicians that work for hospitals, so that we can anonymously rate our places of work, particularly large health systems, because it's the very powerful, that are quieting people, But really, what I love to do and what really wakes me up in the morning and what keeps me up at night, and I just love it, is problem solving. But it's problem solving as it regards disempowered communities. And I like to ride the motorcycle and the boat.
So y'all give our doctors a hand. We are definitely grateful and thankful for what they do and what they bring to the community. We definitely are going to transition to another panel, but before we do that, we definitely want to just thank them for their time and energy and being here. I know all of them personally, so they are great friends of mine, and of course my brother by blood. And we want to just encourage everybody to find that relationship, with a healthcare provider that you can talk to and that your family can talk to. Before we leave, can you quickly give them your handle, social media handle, or your practice or whatever, something that they can continue the relationship, or if they want to reach out and ask further questions. And before we do that, before we close, if anybody has one question, we'll take one question if you have it. If not, definitely if you can go in your social media. They can't hear you.
My handle is appropriate. It's the nagging doctor. And we are at Southwest Family Medicine Associates, and we do functional medicine. And it's right next to UT Southwestern, so we're affiliated with them.
At Vanessa Morales, DC. So pretty simple. So my name, VANESSA DC. That DC is for Doctor of Chiropractic. I work for Parker University. So they are off Walnut Hill and 35. And we have clinics in Irving and in Dallas. And we have, again, some of our interns here that can help support you. So while I would personally not be the one providing any health care, we have amazing interns who would love to be able to work with you on the same basis of everything that you heard me say. They stand behind that too. So
Awesome.
And I'm at Dr. Sean Hubbard. I don't have any period after the doctor and no spaces or anything. So it's DRSEAN and then Hubbard. That's on Facebook as well as Instagram and whatnot, Twitter and all those.
And Dr. Brown Manning, do you have a handle or anything that you want, a website for them to reconnect?
Not right now. I'm just Cynthia L. Brown Manning, MD, probably on everything that I have. So.
Thank you so much. So, guys, does anybody have a question, any one question? If not, we're going to wrap and then turn this one, transition into the next panel. So we want to thank the doctors. You all can get up and hand your mics over. And we also want to let you know that you can give a round of applause. Thank you for our live on-site audience during the pandemic. We want to let you know that we have vendors in the back, those people who are here, and we also have a vegan health food vendor who has food, and she is here, Miss Ebony Palmer, setting up right now. So if you want to support her, both days, day one and day two, have vegan chefs bringing food that is good and nutritional at the same time. So we definitely want to support our vendors. We're going to move to the next panel. I know Sonia Brown, Mayor Pro Tem Sonia Brown, said that she was in the house. If so, she can come on up and grab a mic on the left side. Mr. Rashad Bilal is actually here. Oh, they're both here on the same side. So you can go that way and grab a mic. And we're going to start our second panel. We won't go on as long with the second panel because we are missing one person. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about basically what's happening with community justice in our world. You know, what's happening with this whole social justice thing. We are still interactive, and so when we are talking to the Zoomers, those people who are coming in through Zoom, we want you to know that we hear you and see you. If you have a question, we have Miss Michael Ware in the back. You can come on up right on the couch. And we have Miss Michael Ware here who will write your questions down. If you're on Zoom, can share those questions with the panelists. Again, my name is Olaremi Sano. For anybody joining us live, this is a of business that we're doing in regard to the pandemic. We have an on-site conference happening for 2 days, day one and day two, for the State of the Black Race Conference, Black Wall Streets Everywhere. And we have streets with an S on purpose. What we're doing is basically letting people know that, just like Dr. Morales just said, if you don't see something, you can create it. There was no conference happening in Dallas. People were tired of sitting around in Dallas. People were expressing themselves on Facebook in Dallas and all over the country in regard to wanting to be able to get out and keep moving, but understanding that they needed to be cautious at the same time because we are still in a pandemic. So how do we do that in the best way? Our group, which started during the pandemic, we came up with the concept of let's do a Black Wall Streets Everywhere conference and allow people to come out. Those who want to come out on site can, and those who want to connect through Zoom and live streaming, which we're live on all platforms right now, then they can. So thank you all for joining live. We are going to change over and transition to this next panel. With me, I have another good friend, Sonia Brown. She and I are business owners in Dallas, long-term business owners in Dallas. I've known her I've known you since my very first studio in Dallas. That's crazy. Yeah, that's where I met you. Yeah, so that had to be like 2008, and we're in 2020 now. She's a very good friend, a very good business owner, a very thought-provoking person. She's now the mayor pro tem of Glen Heights in Dallas, and so she actually has started a partnership with the Fijonkra Development Fund, and that's where we started our community garden. So during the pandemic, while we were talking about things like bettering our nutrition and how do we do that and how do we get better food out to communities and how can we then take that and expand it and start a distribution method where eventually we'll be distributing better whole foods to larger communities, because our group is starting with a small seed and we're growing out, so we have a strategic plan for that. What better way than to do it somewhere where you can work with someone who already has a community garden patch? And that's what actually happened. I think we were just having an informal conversation, she and I, and basically I said, you know, we have a group that we started. It's an economic investment group. We want to invest in community gardens. And she said, you know, we have a community garden that used to be purposed in Glen Heights, and let's take a look at that and see if it can serve the needs that you all have. Long story short, we actually took our Brandon Muhammad, who's not here right now. He's preparing food for tomorrow because he's a chef and he's also the coordinator of our community garden. We took him out there, let him look at it, and lo and behold, we came together in partnership, and we have a full-blown garden. We'll show you some pictures of that later on today. So we have Miss Sonia Brown with us, Mayor Pro Tem of Glen Heights. I am encouraging her to continue on this political pipeline. I always tease her, and this is not a formal conference, so I'll just let you know what I tell her. She has to do it because I cannot, okay? I cannot be in politics, and I cannot go through politics, although I'm very political. They would probably do something to me in politics. So I love politics, and I'm politically active, and I stay community engaged, but she has to be the one, and we're going to support her all the way. So this is the kind of thing that we're talking about, expanding relationships over time. Mr. Rashad Bilal is also someone who is a friend now. We actually met online basically through, I think, alignment. And when I say alignment, what I mean is that when you have people who are purposeful, when you have people who their social media handles are purposeful and the things that they are doing is kind of having a ripple effect and an impact around the world, this is what he was doing, and I started to see that early on before he got to where he is now. And I'll let him tell you a little bit more about it, but Mr. Rashad Bilal currently is the co-founder of EYL University. If you haven't heard of that, I want to be a little interactive in this one. You can pull your phones out and look up EYL University on YouTube or Facebook. And I want you to really understand what they've done. They've spent a lot of time and many years on getting to where they are today. How did they arrive at where they are today? Basically taking advantage of social media, looking at some of the things that they feel like our community needs, and they fit very well in the state of the black race because he's very capable and can speak on bringing business and finance to just a regular, everyday conversation. Did I wrap it up pretty well?
Yeah, Earn Your Leisure is what they
Earn Your Leisure University, basically. EYL University, Earn Your Leisure. And so we basically met because they were offering things to the black community and to people of color and anybody basically out there in the social media space, things you can learn to improve yourself, things you can learn to improve your community, things you can learn to improve your neighborhood. And so this conversation basically is going to go, before I go into the conversation, I'll let them extend, like I did with the doctors, and extend that introduction. But this conversation is going to go to some community justice stuff. What can we do to get better? And what can we do to push our community forward based on your vantage point? So I'd like you to introduce a little bit more about what you do and turn it over to Rashad, and then I'll ask a couple questions.
Absolutely. So as Olarume stated, I am the Mayor Pro Tem of Glen Heights, Texas. We are south of downtown. We are between DeSoto and Red Oak. We are about 7 square miles with a population of about 16,000. And I absolutely love this as far as the political side of getting involved with my city and with my community. I ran for office in 2018, was elected to City Council Place 1, and in January of this year, my fellow councilman unanimously voted me Mayor Pro Tem. So it's not something I take lightly. I am very passionate about this. I am very passionate about the state of the black race. And I'm even more passionate now with our current administration about the state of this country. What has happened here recently has let us know that there has been a lot of work that's been done. We've made a lot of progress, but we now see the ugliness, and we now realize that there is still so much work to be done. And that is what motivates me, and that is what keeps me going on a daily basis. The most important thing that I can ask individuals to do at this time on this platform is to complete the census if you have not already done so. Less than 10 minutes of your time will make 10 years worth of impact. The census is not just counting bodies. The census also has to do with federal aid, federal monies that come into communities. It helps the streets in your communities. It will let us know how much representation we have, because for far too long, we are still being taxed without representation. So it is imperative that everyone completes the census. The data is anonymous. We have some people who feel like they don't necessarily want other individuals or other entities to know who they are and where they are. That data remains anonymous for roughly 100 years. So we don't have to worry about that. No matter who's in your house, complete that survey and complete it accurately and complete it today. There was once going to be an extension on the census because of the pandemic. Well, our current administration has now said they will not allow that extension. So the last day to complete the census is September 30th. Complete the census. Then encourage people to vote. Vote like your life depends on it, because it really does. We're in an area and we're in a time where our lives literally depend on us getting out to vote. If people are not registered to vote, assist them with that registration. If they need to ride to the polls, take them to the polls. We've got to vote. If you know people who are felons, and hear me when I say this, there is still the myth out there that all felons or ex-cons cannot vote. That is not true. If you have served your time, I like to call it the 3 Ps: prison, parole, probation. If you have served your time and you are off parole and off probation, you can register to vote and vote. Please pass that message on. Let them know that they do still have that right once they have gone through the process. That has not been taken away from them completely, only for a moment, and that is while they are in prison, while they're on parole, or while they are on probation. But if they're clear and free and, what I like to say, off papers, then please encourage them to go ahead and vote.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Is this up? Yes. Interactive, y'all. We're going to be completely interactive. So just wanted to turn it over to Mr. Bilal and let him introduce a little bit more about what he does.
Yeah, for sure. So once again, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's my first time in Dallas, so I appreciate the Southern hospitality for sure. But yeah, Earn Your Leisure is a platform that we built around 22 months ago now, and it started off as a podcast, and it quickly became, very, very popular online, on social media, on Instagram, and what it is now, Earn Your Leisure, is multiple different things. So what you spoke about as far as EYL University, that's our online education platform. And then we have a media company where we produce content for other people, a YouTube page, Earn Your Leisure. So it's really just based around financial literacy and business. And I feel that is something that is extremely important, in my opinion, probably the most important aspect of our empowerment. We have to talk about political involvement. We have to talk about criminal justice. We have to talk about all of those things. But at the root of everything is money,
Right.
especially in this country. So if we don't have economic empowerment, if we don't understand business, if we don't understand group economics, unfortunately, we're never going to be in a position to demand anything. As I said last night, in this world, either you ask for something or you demand something. You can't demand something if you don't have power and leverage. So the easiest way to have power and leverage is to exercise group economics and exercise the power of the dollar. That's what other communities do, and that's why other communities are more respected, and that's why they have more political power. That's why they have more everything than our community, unfortunately. So financial literacy is something that is extremely popular and growing in steam, especially in our community right now. It's in vogue right now, but we're trying to make it not just something of the moment, trying to make it something that lasts forever. So you hear a lot of terms about like buying back the block and things of that nature is very popular. And it's encouraging that so many people are actually into financial literacy and business right now. But it's something that we can't afford to just, make it slogans. We actually have to practice it, put it in place, develop business, learn about investing, learn about saving money, things of that nature. So that's all things that we do with our platform. And we'd love to talk about that in more detail today if you like.
Thank you. And we have a couple more people. We actually had a video intro by attorney Mawali Davis. If that screen can stay up, well, we'll go to this one. We have, I do know that we have Brother Reginald Muhammad because I can see you right now. We also had attorney Mawali Davis, who is a good friend of mine. They're both from Atlanta. I serve in different capacities with them. Mawali Davis and I go way back into our 20s, which was, I won't tell you how many years ago, because I don't want you to do the math. No, I'm just kidding. So anyway, we go back, and then I also serve as an executive committee member on the National Reparations Summit with Brother Reginald Muhammad, who's going to talk a little bit. I'm going to introduce him a little and then let him introduce himself further so he can tell you what space he works in. He's been 30 years in the reparations movement. He's an assistant professor at Clark Atlanta University, and he's here with us as we were there in Atlanta with him for the Reparations Summit a couple of weeks ago. So, Brother Muhammad, welcome to the forum. We have you on Zoom here. We can see you well, and we want you to tell the audience a little bit about what you do.
First off, thank you, Ms. O'Reilly, and to your entire organization for the great work that you're doing and you continue to do, and you historically have always done. And I just want to thank you all for allowing me to have a few moments with you all as it relates to reparations. And of course, again, I am with the National Reparations Summit, and we have here in Atlanta, the National Reparations Institute, which is our think tank, where we deal with research, compile research, strategize and organize and mobilize around the question of reparations. And I just want to thank you all again for allowing me to be a part of it, because one of the things that I'm very clear about is that reparations is the only political and economic vehicle or process that will lead to we're talking about complete liberation, restoration of our people. We're doing a lot of patchwork around the country with different forms and different organizations, but reparations, I'm talking about complete reparations. If you're talking about an economic, educational, public health issues, again, reparations. And just as the young brother just alluded to, it deals with finance. We can obtain reparations. I'm on a national tour right now of how to actually secure reparations for Blacks in America. It's not a 20-year process. It's not a 15-year process. And those of you those who think that and advocate and teach that, I'm here to clear up that myth about how long it will take for us actually to secure reparations. It has to have a model. We must have a model and a methodology for doing it, of course, but it does not take 20 and 30 years to secure reparations for Blacks in America. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we're just going to get right in, dive right in. We're not going to stay as long on this panel. We want to have some specific, very specific questions and answers in regard to what we're seeing right now in the continual space during the pandemic and how people are responding to things like George Floyd's death, Breonna Taylor's death, Elijah McClain's death, people who have been killed and murdered by the police, and what that does, what kind of impact that has on our communities for you, Mayor Brown, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, and what kind of impact that has on our businesses for you, Rashad, and then how does that impact our continual push when we time after time, month after month, week after week, almost day after day, have people being murdered in cold blood. There was another young gentleman who, Attorney Mawali Davis, he's not here, but since he's not, I'll go ahead and share Mr. Julian Lewis's story in Atlanta, which most people didn't hear about. It's probably one of the most egregious of all the deaths that have happened, because the police literally ran him off the road in a rural community, and because it was rural, that's probably why it didn't make it on the news, ran him off the road because of a broken tail light, and within 2 seconds murdered him. 2 seconds of them getting out of their car. And so just last week, there was a caravan from Atlanta down to Sylvania, Georgia, a very rural town, to look at what they can do for Mr. Julian Lewis. But we have so many of these multiple layers of trauma happening right now, and we still have to live every day. We still have to move on and go on. Does that make sense? So we're trying to figure out how we can do that. What kind of people are pushing in your political space for people of color, for black communities? What are we doing in the political space? What are we doing in the business space? Knowing that we can't just shut down. We don't have an opportunity to just shut down because people are trying to come up still during the pandemic. And then how do you just keep pushing forward to reparations that we know the government in this society has been against for black people forever? Reparations is not a new discussion. Reparations have been given to other communities. And so we had a layout, maybe at the National Reparations Summit, we had one attorney, Sister Tawana Morgan, who laid it out systematically how other communities have received reparations already, not just way back in the day, but some of them in current times. So what we're going to do is just go around with real quickly, and we'll start with Sonia, Ms. Brown, and we'll go to Mr. Bilal, and we'll let them answer. What are you doing right now in the political and community space? I was with you literally at we were meeting at the community garden, and we had to stop because of a racial issue that started right in Glen Heights that turned into a big inflamed issue, made it to the local news. The business was shut down because this gentleman called somebody the N-word at his mechanic shop, and our meeting at the community space turned into a big political rally that lasted for about 10 days here in Dallas. So how are we dealing with that?
You said so much, and there's so much there to unpack. To just try to even digest, we would be days, probably weeks or months if we looked at all of this. But what I have to say is we are a resilient people.
Right.
When it comes to pushing through, we push through. It's in our DNA, and that's what we have to keep doing. One thing that we have to always remember is this: it's not given to the swift, and we know that. Reparations have been in talk since the Emancipation Proclamation. That's nothing new. We have to keep pushing. As you mentioned, other cultures have gotten it. Other people have received it, and not just a long time ago. It's here recent. The most important thing I think we can do right now is to not become desensitized to what's going on. It happens daily. We only fortunately get a chance to see the ones that are caught on video.
Right.
So I'm going to go so far as to say it happens even more than once a day. We just don't get a chance to see all of it when it happens. But what we have to do is remember, vote locally. The people that are in local offices usually go on and they become the senators, they become the congressmen, they become a president. So what you have to remember to do is to vote locally. And you have to vote for the presidential election, because when you do that, you're not only voting for a president, you are voting for Supreme Court justices. Right. And we see what's happening with that now. You are voting for all of those federally appointed judges. So it's so much bigger, and it's a lot larger than what a lot of people are saying. I see the rhetoric on Facebook: I'm not voting, I don't like any of the candidates. Well, your non-vote is a vote. That's what I have to tell people. I stress that all the time. You sitting out of an election is not going to help a situation. I understand you may not like the candidates, but until we can make the necessary changes that we need to make, you still have to get out and vote and continue to push. Continue to grow one another. Continue to invest in one another. And by that, I mean, if you know a small mom and pop minority-owned business, support it. And don't ask for the discount. You don't go to Macy's and ask for a discount. You don't go into Kroger and ask for a discount. But we always have a tendency to ask for a discount if we're shopping with a minority. Why? We shouldn't. 9 times out of 10, that minority business's product or service is going to be better than that of the big box store or the chain, because we know we have to be better. It's unfortunate that we devalue our own, but we will then turn around and pay retail somewhere else. So support one another. When it comes to the police, I do not believe we have to defund the police. I think that is the wrong word to use. We need to take a look at police budgets and see where they are going, where that money is going, and what that money is being used for. But to defund, the actual meaning of defund means to take funds away. We still need that. They need money to operate. But when it comes to the militarization of the police forces around the country, that's what we need to look at. When it comes to the overtime pay for police, we have to look at that. Is it cheaper to pay a little bit of overtime, or do we bring in new police officers? Well, here in Dallas, they want to do away with the overtime pay. You can't do away with the overtime pay because it would cost exponentially more to bring in more police officers, to actually hire more police officers. So when you look at that, you would actually be putting more toward that budget. What we need to do is reform police, and police officers need to be retrained. But this is going to go back to the start of the police. The police were started, and we all know, to catch slaves. We have to go back to the very beginning. If real change is going to be made, we're going to have to go back to even the Constitution of the United States that says blacks were 3/5 of a person. Because unfortunately, we do still have a lot of people, and they are the powers that be, who are going by that. They look at the Constitution as law. The Constitution was not written for blacks and minorities. It was not. So until we can go back and make some radical changes in the areas that really need to be made, we are going to continue with this systemic issue of racism and oppression. The police need to be completely gutted and reformed, not necessarily defunded, but reformed and retrained, and maybe reallocate dollars. Reallocate dollars to maybe some social workers to come and join police forces so that they know how to deal with individuals who have mental health issues. If someone is in a mental health crisis, you don't call the police for that. You need to call a mental health worker, because that's going to look differently. However, if you have the wrong cop show up at someone who's in the midst of a mental health crisis, then it's over. It's lights out. Elijah McClain, this young autistic man, was killed. But then we have to look at this. Was it at the hands of the police, or was it at the hands of the EMT who actually pushed the ketamine? What is it that we are doing? I have a 16-year-old son who stands 6'4" and loves to wear hoodies. It can be 1,000 degrees outside, but he's going to put on a hoodie. And I have to explain to him, son, you can't wear that hoodie. You can't wear that hoodie to go and walk around the mall with your friends, because you are a threat. Your skin makes you a threat. Your height makes you a double threat. And if you have on that hoodie, it's a wrap. If somebody perceives you to do the wrong thing and the wrong police officer shows up. As a black woman, I used to feel somewhat safe. Then we had Sandra Bland, who I think about every single day. It is amazing what this will do to our minds and our psyche, but we have to be stronger than that. And I will tell you that this is a part of the systemic racism. This is the DNA of racism. Right. It gets into your core, it gets into your brain, and what they are trying to do is make us fearful. They're trying to make minorities fearful. We can't. We have to stay vigilant. We have to stay the course. Riding down the street, we pull up behind a truck, and you know my son. We pull up behind a truck, and he has a big MAGA, M-A-G-A sticker in his car. on his windshield. And my son just says, T2 says, why do they hate us because of our skin? Mom, I'll never understand that. I said, son, listen, I'm 48 years old and I'll never understand it either. It's going to be those things where we don't understand, but we have to act. Don't let your fear cause you to not act. Don't allow fear to stifle you. There are things that we can do, like showing up and sharing these Black Wall Streets. Anything that we can do to help, we need to do. This place should be packed. And I guarantee you after this one, the next one will be. We have got the power. This ball is rolling. We've got the momentum. We just have to keep it going. But this is going to have to go back to the very beginning. It has to go back to the very root of this. And once we get there, then we will see the pendulum swing more in our direction.
Awesome. So I want you to pick up where she left off, Mr. Bilal, and then talk about, how are people continuing business during a pandemic and with all these things that are happening around them? I know you all are continuing to do it. I know you know a lot of business owners that are continuing to do it. We even have one here. I keep mentioning Mr. Derek Williams. He's back in the back, one of the studio owners. I've seen his art change over this period of time and reflect some of the things that are going on around in our society. Right after this panel, we're going to auction off some of the art that he's doing live here. So there are business owners that are continuing. I know it's hard and they've made transitions, but what are you seeing out there in the business space with all this stuff going on?
Yeah, it's an interesting time that we're in right now. I feel like there's opportunity in every crisis. And I feel like Black people especially, if you Black, when it's sunny, you got to come outside with an umbrella because you never know what could happen. So it's like people talk about a recession, but it's always been a recession in the neighborhood. It's been a recession forever. So for us, the pandemic was actually a blessing as far as the online e-commerce space. See a lot of entrepreneurs really thriving. So I deeply encourage everybody to pivot. I feel like right now is actually a unique moment in history for entrepreneurs, especially, like I said, the online entrepreneur space where I've never seen this much opportunity. I've never seen the amount of money that people are making. And now I feel like the theme of Buy Black, Support Black Business is at an all-time high right now. So once again, we can't just let that become a hashtag. We got to actually do that. And that's something that's really picked up steam, and people are supporting their local Black businesses. And there was actually a movement, I think it was My Black Receipt, started by somebody that was on our show, a young lady out of DC. She has I think her page is The Black Upstart, Kezia Williams. She's been on like CNN, CNBC, all that. And she started something just like a hashtag of like My Black Receipt. And then you'll buy something and take a picture of the receipt just to actually prove that you brought it from.
Nice.
I think in like 3 days, it was like $15 million worth of receipts.
Wow.
And then it grew to like $50 million like within like 3 weeks. So that just goes to show you, like, right now, as I said, I mean, there's good and bad in everything. So being that, we see all these social injustice happening right before our eyes, I think it's really encouraging people to say, okay, we're not really relying on government, we're not relying on the police, we have to rely on each other. Right. And now, instead of just being discouraged and mad, how can you turn that anger into something productive?
Yes.
And I think that through business and economics is definitely a way where we can actually do that in a productive manner, because I feel like that's really the ultimate liberator. Like, it's kind of hard to really be who you want to be when you have to answer to somebody.
That's right.
But it's like, for me, I don't have to answer to anybody, so I could say whatever I want. I could dress however I want, because that's just who I am. But if I was working for corporate America, I would have to be careful what I said on Instagram or on Twitter, because my boss might look at it and I might get reprimanded for that. So I feel like, a lot of times we can't fully express ourselves. We can't fully, be who we want to be or say what we want to say. You see that even at a very high level, even like sports and entertainment, right? Like, a lot of the guys, they might want to take a stance, but they know if they take that knee, they might not be playing for the Cowboys on Sunday.
Right.
So it's like a decision, which is more important. expressing how you feel or feeding your family.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have to compromise how you feel and you can still feed your family, to me, that's like the win-win. So I feel like we have to do for self. That's extremely important. We can't rely on anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the days of asking and relying for people are long gone. So group economics and business, I can't say that enough, is really, that's my pathway. It's not the only pathway, but that's what I'm in. So I feel like that's something that, if we can learn about, all right, there's other ways to make money outside of sports and entertainment.
Right.
If you're black, and that's what we really are used to. That's our wealth standard, because that's all we really see.
Mm-hmm.
At a high level, successful people, if you ask a kid, like, who's the black billionaires, they're gonna say Oprah Winfrey, entertainment. They're gonna say Jay-Z, entertainment. Even Tyler Perry, entertainment. They're all business, but it's business rooted around entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like we can do other things besides just sports and entertainment. So now when you understand, okay, real estate, okay, I can have passive income from a real estate property and nobody even knows who I am. I could become a millionaire from the stock market. I could become a millionaire from e-commerce. I could be a millionaire from selling things online. And people in China, like that's the thing with our culture, is very captivating.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't fully understand the power of it. Like, you go to Indonesia and they listening to Drake. Like you go to Taiwan and they dress like how we dress in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than just that. So it's like now we understand that we have cultural influence, which is honestly more impactful than even money.
Right.
Because now we can affect the whole entire world. So when you see George Floyd and people not just protesting in America, they protesting in Australia,
Mm-hmm.
they protesting in London,
Mm-hmm.
they protesting in Ghana. So they really waiting. The whole world is waiting for black people in America to actually do something. Like I'm telling you, because it's like even our platform, our podcast, people all over the world listening, like they love the resilience and just it's just special people. They feel like black people in America. So that's what I'm saying. Like we have injustices all over the world, but you don't see the same outcries that you see when it happens in America for black
Right.
people. So we should see that, and we should realize that like everybody's just waiting on us. So if we can actually, pull it together and make a strong stance, it's like I feel like it could change very quickly. It could change very quickly because it's like individually you can change very quickly. I tell people that all the time. It's a very thin line between being homeless and being a millionaire.
Right.
I've seen it. A couple decisions in either direction can have you sleeping on the street or have you in a mansion.
Mm-hmm.
So the same way it's a very thin line for a person, it's a very thin line for for a group of people as well.
Mm-hmm.
You see other groups of people when they come in one generation, their whole family tree changes. So it's very, very quickly we can change the whole course of our people here in America. But we all have to be on one accord, and we all have to just, understand that we can do it, believe that we can do it, and then educate. Education is extremely important. I think we've been discouraged from education for so long, not because we don't like to learn, but the way that we was taught wasn't interesting.
Right.
Like even for me, like I wasn't the best student in school. It wasn't because I wasn't interested in learning. I just wasn't interested in the way that they was teaching me.
Right.
But when I became an adult and I started to teach myself and I started to be around people that can actually teach me the way that I wanted to learn, then there was no limit to what I wanted to learn and what I could learn. So I feel like, a lot of times we think education is only K through 12 in college. And that's not. That's just formal education.
Mm-hmm.
But self-education is what's really going to propel you. Because even if you go to business school, 9 times out of 10, what they're teaching you to do is become an employee,
Right.
to become a manager of a company. They're not teaching you, the entrepreneur side and how to actually, get funding for your business, things of that nature. These are things you have to learn on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's so crazy because it's like, we go to school, but when you out in the world, a lot of those things don't matter. So if you go to the bank right now, they're not asking me for my college degree. They ask me for my bank statement. How much
Right.
money am I bringing in on my
Right.
business?
Right.
My P&L statement.
Right.
They can care if it doesn't matter if I have a 3rd grade level education. If I'm bringing in $1 million, then they're going to give me a loan.
Mm-hmm.
I can go to Harvard, and if I'm just struggling to get by, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like, for a long time, for us, especially for our parents, we didn't have the proper information. So it was like, okay, the dream is to go to school, get an education, and then get a good job.
Mm-hmm.
But we see that there is no such thing as a good job. In this economy, there's no such thing as job security.
Right.
Even teachers, where that was like one of the most secure jobs that you could ever possibly have, and now they furloughing teachers. I didn't even know that was possible. They're telling teachers, like, even if you tenured, you might not be able to keep your job. And that's like the strongest union outside of the police union. So I think the way that we look at things is that we can't just look at it from a standpoint of go to school, get a degree, and get a job. That's okay if that's what you want to do, but I think that you always have to look at yourself as an entrepreneur, even if you don't look at yourself as a full-time entrepreneur. If you're a doctor, you can't just rely on getting a job in the medical field, because we know that there's plenty of doctors that are struggling. You can go to school and have $200,000 of debt, and then you get a job and make $100,000. So you're not even really making enough to really pay back your student loan. So it's good to be a doctor, but you should buy real estate as well. You should invest in the stock market as well. You should write a book as well, right? So multiple streams of income. Multiple streams. They said the average millionaire has 7 streams of income. That doesn't mean you have to have 7 jobs, but you have to find a way where you can actually have multiple streams of income, maybe from your one root thing that you do. So that's one of the things that we do with Earn Your Leisure. We talk about that later on if you want. But I feel like it's just so much that we don't fully understand. We don't know about money. We don't understand the power of economics. So all of these things, police brutality, all of this stuff is things that has been happening. It's nothing new. It's just people just catching it on cell phones. That's it. But like I said, I mean, it's different when if somebody attacks somebody and then it's okay, your political campaign done. We're not going to fund your political. You're in politics. You understand how that works. When people come with, okay, we're going to give you $1 million check, and this is what we need to happen, not what we would like to happen, those things happen.
Right.
So I think that it all comes down to that, and we just have to everybody has a part to play, and we just got to keep moving forward.
So we're going to be, so we're talking about resilience, really, like continuing on basically no matter what the factors are, because we can either do that or die or shut down. I mean, there aren't any options, really. The option is to continue on and continue to push through the pandemic, through the social justice issues, and make what you can out of it. And that's basically what they teach on the different platforms. I'm just proud to know Rashad Bilal, because he has 2 podcasts on 2 number 5 and above podcasts on national platforms. That is Market Mondays, where you can learn about the stock market and learn about options and learn about things that our community is not taught. I am a living witness that you can go through the full educational system and not be taught about the 2 things that are most important. That is money in a market economy and culture, who you are. You can go through all levels of education and not really learn about the root of those things, which is the root of the issues that we have right now that we're talking about. So I want to get Derek, if Derek Williams is walking around, I want to bring him up because I want to show y'all something. The reason why we are having an interactive conference is because we want to show how certain things, even if it's small, even if it's a small example, how we can start to turn those things around. I watched Tag, who is the owner of Click Studio that we're in right now. I watched her move through a pandemic. Derek, if you could come up, and bring your painting. I watched Tag, raise your hand. I watched her work so extremely hard through this pandemic. And I'm not just saying watched. I actually mentor her because most people know that I had a brick and mortar dance studio for 17 years. And so I know a lot of the people who are still in the space. I mentor a lot of them. Many of them will be here tomorrow teaching class, just coming together to do a bang-up job at dance and fitness and let people start moving again during a pandemic, which is a solution. So I watched her move through this space as a business owner. I've also watched Derek Williams move through this space, and he's going to come up and show us his artwork, and then we're going to go back to Brother Muhammad. But I've watched him move and transition time after time during the pandemic. People are just holding on, never losing the resilience that they always had, just trying to make a different way. So I want him, actually, I'll hold your piece, and I want you to talk about it and what it means to you, because I've seen some things online, and I keep seeing his expression. And, you know, a dancer is not a visual artist, and a visual artist, although my paint teacher, which is Derek, he dances all the time. But, you know, we have different types of talent and skills. So I always am amazed at visual arts. Are y'all amazed at visual artists? Like how they can just sit down. He just sat there and created this out of his head right here in this space. So I want him to talk about his piece and talk a little bit about what he's doing during this pandemic as a business owner, brick and mortar. And then we're going to auction this piece off and keep the conversation going. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to do a bid, and we're going to keep it going, and we'll probably keep it going on Zoom. But we are going to auction it off. So I'll turn it over to you, and I'll hold it.
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing? Good, good. This piece here, basically, when she called me to ask me to do some things, I went like, okay, well, I'm not sure what I'm gonna paint, but as I've heard the conversation talking about health and wellness and different things like that, so I said, you know what? This guy here, basically, he's just expressing himself. You know, just kind of just saying on his T-shirt, vegan life, vegetarian, eat well. Basically, most of my art, it comes from the top of my head. You know, I express myself through my art. And like she was saying, I had to close my shop due to the pandemic, but I was able to still go mobile, you know. And I mean, I look at it like you said earlier, it's a blessing to us because it actually opened my eyes to focus more on my business and how when I do go back into it to be a better entrepreneur, save more, invest in more, because I wasn't doing that. The money was coming so fast. It's like, you know, the more you make, the more you spend. I mean, I make more money now doing this than I worked for Time Warner for 20 years. But I survived. I didn't even know how I survived because I wasn't making near what I'm making now at Time Warner, but I survived. So it's basically managing your time and your money. So this opportunity has given me this pandemic has also given me an opportunity to reflect on my business and how to do things different. I love art. She can tell you. I paint every day. I don't dance like I just get in some moods, and when my knees acting right, I might dance a little bit for the most part. But for the most part, I'm very honored to be here, and she's a great friend of mine, and she's been supporting me for the past 4 years, so I'm thankful, you know. So again, this piece right here represents health and wellness. As you can read the shirt, whatever she do with it, hey, it's cool.
What size is it?
It's 24 by 30. I'm sorry, 36 by 48.
36 by 48.
Yes.
So this is what we're going to do. I know Derek is not going to be able to be with us all day, but he is coming back later tonight here at Click. I actually have a birthday party. I just turned a certain age. And no, I'm just kidding. I did just turn a certain age on the 23rd, but he's going to be back for my party. We're going to be doing a paint and sip during my party here. And so we'll keep this painting, but we're going to start it here. And I want somebody to call out a value. And I just want to teach a lesson, a live lesson right now, because again, this is an interactive. We have people on Zoom. We're live on Facebook and on all different platforms. I want to talk about value, like what Ms. Brown just talked about. When we go into black businesses, a lot of times we, you know, had the tendency at some point to ask for a hookup. Anybody ever heard of a hookup? Right? Anybody ever asked for a hookup? Yeah, that's Regina. Yeah, we always ask for a hookup, but we want to keep people in business, and that's a different mindset. What Rashad was talking about just a minute ago, to me, is sovereignty. And anybody that knows me knows that I've been in personal sovereignty for over 26 years. I've worked for myself for over 26 years. I make it a practice. I'm around people who work for themselves. My alignment is with people who work for themselves. I do not let other folks tell me what to say and what to do. I own 100% of my own time. I get up and make my own schedule every single day. If I don't work, I don't eat. That's how it is. And so I've learned to be that way over time because I feel better that way. I'm less stressed that way. I don't have the same stressors that people have when a boss is breathing down your neck. I fired my boss at 26 years old. And I'll just tell you so you can calculate, because black don't crack, right? I'm 52 years old, and literally I fired my boss when I was 26. And I had a master's degree. I did everything you're supposed to do in this country. I got my high school diploma, went on to get my bachelor's. I got a master's degree, started a PhD, and I just got tired. I was stressed out. My salary at the time did not seem like it was commensurate with the amount of work that I was putting out. Anybody have that story? Anybody getting underpaid and overworked, right? And so what that means is that we can either stay in that space, like what Rashad was saying, we can either stay in that space or we can be resilient and move away from it. How do you move away from it? You learn what you need to learn, you do what you need to do, and you stay resilient, and you find out the information that you need to find out. Does that mean, what does that look like? It can mean, hey, I might need to learn about stocks. I might need to put a little bit of money over to the side and watch that money grow in stocks and learn what to do about that. I actually learned about options, what that meant, through his podcast. I did not know what stocks and options were. I started, investing in stocks based on people telling me what stock to buy, but I didn't know personally what that looked like. I just said, hey, let me know when you find a good one, and I'll put my money over there, and that's literally what I was doing. And so somebody said options are a lot better because you can make a lot more in options. So I had to go find out what that meant for myself, and I tapped into their podcast, and I learned about what options was from Mark Monroe, a person that I learned from, from his podcast. So this painting is amazing. I think Derek is just one of our amazing artists. We have tons of amazing artists, but he is one of those people who is definitely resilient. He represents the average business owner who is trying to do what they can do with what they love in order to stay alive. And so we want to start this. I want somebody else to call out the value, and we're going to start an auction, and we're going to keep it live on Zoom. And we're going to do that for a couple of minutes and then maybe keep it going again later on tonight until we get a buyer. So somebody call out a value. Anybody?
I'll start it at 150.
150. So that's our value that we're starting this at. What do you all think, and what could you bid at? What would you bid at? Because we want this piece to be sold sometime today. Maybe not right now, but we definitely want it to be sold. We want to express our gratitude for Mr. Williams. I know he's going to be going out in a little bit here, but we want this to get sold today. So 150. Anybody else? 200. 200. It's definitely worth that. This is wall art by Ken Folks. If you want to find him online, you can look him up, Ken Folks, or Paint with Ken Folks in Dallas. He's very interactive. He does parties, he does events, and he does it well with a smile and with the best attitude and spirit I could ever, imagine. And so this is, I don't know, maybe we should give it a name. Do y'all want to give it a name? Do y'all want to give it a name? Micah, can you see Zoom? You want to ask the people on Zoom chat real quick how much they think this piece is worth? We want to auction it off, and we want a buyer sometime today. So why don't you ask them that, and we'll keep the conversation going. So I'm going to put it over here. Maybe by the end, we'll give it a name. And I want to get Brother Reginald Muhammad back on and let him just talk really quickly about what he feels that based on the business that we still need to do in this country, we have a lot of businesses. We have a lot of people who would love to be entrepreneurs. We have a lot of people who could do a business or a service or sell a product that we need in our community, but many times we fall short because of economics. And so y'all know my favorite space is to just do it yourself. Whether or not we get reparations, I feel like we need to be doing it ourselves, which is why we have the State of the Black Race Conference here in Dallas, and we're going to move it around. We are integrating a lot of business owners, but Brother Reginald, what do you think with reparations? What kinds of businesses could we do, and how basically can we go about getting that? What are some of the first steps of reparations? If you can kind of put it in maybe 1, 2, 3 first steps.
An issue that you brought up earlier, because not only I deal with reparations, but I teach public policy. And as a political scientist and a behavior scientist, let me address one of the key issues here too, even with the whole police brutality piece, is that this is about public policy at the end of the day. Notice what does not happen. If we have over 20,000 black law enforcement officers in the country, they do not shoot unarmed white people, and because it's not going to be allowed to happen. So with public policy piece, voting, I'm a person who votes, who registered to vote, but that's not the only mechanism. It has to translate in the way of public policy. To the degree that we're voting, but we're building, you all are correct with the economic piece. Until we do for self and separate ourselves to a degree from the European culture and behavior, we won't ever change the results. It won't come via marching. It won't come appealing to their humanity, asking them to be civil and all of that. We have to vote, yes, but we have to build our own infrastructure. And I'm with you on this because remember, all liberation is about land. And some of your guests have talked about the fact that we got to start purchasing land, masses of it. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, Sister Olaremi, but the people on this conference and those on social media platforms who are listening to us, it's about us again, land, millions of acres of land that we need as a people to start manufacturing and start growing. Remember, reparations too is that European people and the government cannot give us reparations. There's some restitutions and redress that they owe us, but that reparations has to come from self. Okay, there's an internal reparations that we must deal with. But let me get back to the police piece real quick, because this is key and important, and this is how we turn the corner. For those who, along with voting, after this election, we have to look at public policy with teeth in it. Give an example. Police reform, we have to do away with immunity clauses that are allowing police officers to get away with murder in our community. We got to push that. For Black elected officials, white elected officials, anybody comes in our community talking about they want our vote, then we got to be able to hand them what our agenda is. It has to be clearly spelled out and concisely spelled out. We want public policy that will do away with immunity clauses to the degree that it allows police to behave in the way they do and kill our people. Until we do that, we'll be here around here another 20 and 30 years appealing to them, talking about better training. Police officers are some of the best trained people in the country. How do I know that? My father was a police officer, one of the first Black police officers in St. Petersburg, Florida. So it's not just training. It has to do with public policy. If they have to carry their own personal insurances and as opposed to the city and the county being held liable for bad shoots and bad officers, when they have to be held accountable, losing their post certification, when things like that works its way into public policy, then you'll start to see the change. How can I prove that? Because at the end of the day, we have over 20,000 Black law enforcement officers, and they make sure that they don't make the mistake of pulling their guns and shooting unarmed white people or Black people to that degree, because they understand there are some consequences. Until we make policing strong public policy with it, we'll be sitting arguing this point again 10 and 20 years from now. It's not just about training and getting better police officers, more educated police officers. There's a mindset, there's a mentality and a culture that's systemic. And Dr. Wilson has reminded us, and Neely Fuller, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, everything you think that you understand will only confuse you. If you don't understand racism, white supremacy, how it works, and everything you think that you understand will only confuse you. And again, this is about public policy. If you say Black people have matured because we had a Black president, then I'm gonna ask you as a political science and behavior scientist, I'm gonna say, well, where are your major think tanks if you're matured politically? Where are your super PACs? Where are your lobbyists? Because this is how we turn the corner. And yes, we have to do things individually and build our businesses and everything else. But how do we affect the masses of our people economically, politically, socially, and education? Because American capitalism, the way we're doing it and teaching individualism, that will not turn the corner for the masses of our people. And we will still have Pookie, Ray Ray, and Sinead in them in every city until we implement reparations at the national level. And until then, we're going to continue to vote and we're going to continue to build and organize. And if we do that, then we'll see we start to turn the corner in the next 5 to 10 years, and we'll start to eradicate the problems of police murdering our people and brutality in our community. But it starts with public policy. Public policy is critical about that. And if we don't do that, it's all social symbolic. The marching, to a degree, has become social symbolic. The voting has become social symbolic. When we elect Black people, Black faces in high places, that will not turn the corner for the masses of our people. Much of it has become social symbolic. And how we eradicate that, we vote, of course, but we start in the process of building. We have a clear agenda. And with the national reparations piece, we're drafting right now a declaration on reparations. So we'll spell out what reparations look like. It's a land question. We're talking about millions of acres of land so we can start to feed and manufacture for our people. This is how we turn the corner, not individually, but as the masses of our people. So again, let's push and look at public policy as well as voting. Tell our people to vote. And I'm a political scientist, and I tell our people it's a tool, but it will never liberate our people economically, politically, and socially. Because at the end of the day, we have to consolidate our forces and forget about the labels that we wear, the titles that we wear, the degrees that we have earned. We have to, again, organize our people. It has to, number one, deal with public policy. Number two, organize our people and clearly spell out where we're going and how we get there. What's missing in the reparations movement is the lack of model and methodology. This is why we've been around for 100 years talking reparations. As late as 2015 and 2016, before President Obama left office, Joe Biden signed a reparations bill for the remaining survivor Holocaust victims who they say were still in the United States but below the poverty level. So America believes in reparations, and white politicians believe in reparations, but because of their disrespect of us and not valuing us, they have not seriously considered reparations. One thing that I want to say real quickly, how we are able to secure reparations and do anything in this country that we want to do economically, politically, socially, educationally, and culturally. We got to remember that there is a ruling class of people, a white ruling class of people. If we remember the quadruple base theory, that all political and economic decisions are based on generally 4 variables. Will it enhance or ill affect, number one, their power base, their profit base, their policy base, and their privilege base? Let me say that again. If it will enhance or ill affect their power base, their profit base, their policy base, and their privilege base. You just saw the NFL, you just saw the NBA and the National Baseball League players organized weeks ago. And because that's part of their privilege base, they're starting to make some concessions because you're starting to ill affect their privilege base. So now they're all of a sudden saying, well, let's look at social justice now. Let's look at Black Lives Matter now. Let's consider what the players want. Because why? Because their privilege base is starting to be ill affected. And so how are we going to get reparations in Black America? We start to ill affect their power base and their profit base. We'll get reparations within the next 5 to 7 years. It doesn't take 10 and 20 years. If you want to talk about economic stimulus package that's directed toward Blacks, start to ill affect their power base, their profit base, their policy base, and their privilege base, and we can get what we want. You saw them move $2 trillion within a matter of weeks for the first stimulus package. Why? Because their power base and their profit base was starting to be ill affected. So they needed to put money into the economy quickly. So within 2 weeks, they moved $2 trillion. They approved $2 trillion. And again, we will be able to get reparations because we're going to ill affect their power base, their profit base, their policy base, and their privilege base. And if we do that, anything that we want in America, we can do it. But we got to be organized. We got to be complete. We got to come with a complete agenda. We got to be organized. And one of the things that all of your guests have talked about, including you, Sister Olorami, is that we got to get out of that fear. Once we overcome that fear, we can do anything. We got Black elected officials at the county level, the local level, the national and state level. We put them in there. We voted them in, but they're too damn afraid to make moves on behalf of Black people. So, in order for them to get our vote next time at the local level, because all politics is local, we got to start with an agenda and hold them accountable and tell them. Because if you go to the LGBTQ community, you go to the Jewish community, they give you their agenda. And you better sign off on 3 or 4 things, or otherwise you go to hell. We got to do the same thing with Black politicians and white politicians. If Joe Biden wants our vote, you can't scare me and say, well, Donald Trump is going to be reelected, so we're going to automatically give Joe Biden our vote. I'm going to be voting. I'm going to be voting. But at the end of the day, what's the quid pro quo? You going to sign off and back reparations, or there's going to be some national programs that would benefit Black people. Otherwise, the hell with you. Because at the end of the day, we must do for self. And once we do for self, we can do anything. We have over $1 trillion of spendable income in the Black community. We don't have to continue to march. We don't have to continue to beg and pray and ask for others to do for what we can get up and do for ourselves. And that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Muhammad.
I
So-
think we can end right there.
Right, and we will end right there. So that
Oloreme,
being said,
if
go-
I can, I would love to piggyback on what he said. Everything was on point with what he said. And if you will note, when it comes to these marches, August 28th, you were there, I was there. We were in D.C. 57 years to the day of the original March on Washington, and we're still marching for the same thing.
right.
57
Jobs and
years
jobs.
to the day, we are marching for the
Jobs.
same thing. If you have an opportunity, pull up John Lewis's speech he made in 1963 at the ripe age of 23. It is eerily similar to what we are still dealing with. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Right.
We keep marching, we keep singing, we shall overcome. When? Now is the time.
Right.
I am in complete agreement with Brother Reginald Muhammad in what he says. We have to demand these things. And if you can't do it, as he said, you're not the candidate for us.
Right.
Yes, the power is ours. This is ours to lose. It's not ours to win because we've already won. We have to play the cards strategically. But this is for us. Everything that we want to do, we can do, and we have the power to do. As he mentioned, $1 trillion worth of spending. We have that power. Anytime we start boycotting things, notice they come out with a black statement. Anytime. And we can boycott something for 1 week. 1 week will shut a company down. And they've realized that. They understand that. And then all of a sudden, when you go to these stores, websites or their online stores, now they have a statement up that supports the Black Lives Movement and it supports the Black agenda. Where was that prior to George Floyd's death?
NFL.
Where was that? Yeah, Roger Goodell has a lot to learn from the NBA and Adam Silverman. That young man, although he's not 100% there, he's getting there. He allows things to happen, and the NFL needs to definitely take note. But we need to do what we need to do. Stop buying those jerseys from Jerry Jones.
Right.
Stop buying that stuff. If you want to own a jersey, figure out how to manufacture that jersey, and then you sell it. You start making that money, and you start bringing the dollars back into the community and doing what we need to do for ourselves.
Right. Thank you so much, y'all. That was a good statement. Yes.
I want to disagree with something you said, but I don't want to negate what you said. Okay. You said defunding the police is something we don't need to say. But I think we need to start qualifying and quantifying some of the statements that we make. Defunding the police. And this is only because I know the cost of what people are asking to defund. Those big old trucks with the 48, 58-inch tires on them is $16 million a piece. They're purchased from defense contractors. Thank you, sir. Those vehicles are purchased from defense contractors. There is a process in our government that goes through the Department of State called Civil Military Affairs. And then they go through a department in the Department of Defense called Defense Military Sales. When the Army builds too many of those vehicles to put on the streets of Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, East Africa, Poland, and everywhere our soldiers, Marines, airmen, and sailors are being killed to defend this country, those vehicles are sold at a cut rate price to put on the streets of Dallas. A $16 million vehicle then just got cut in half to $8 million to police your brothers and sisters. The reason I say we have to start qualifying and quantifying, many of you all didn't know that about those vehicles, did you? See, do you know that the turret, meaning that one piece of shielded piece of equipment on the top of that vehicle that traverses 360 degrees with a gun on the top, 50 caliber or higher? Who needs a bullet on the streets of Detroit that big? Who needs a bullet on the streets of Dallas that big? Now, the reason I say we need to qualify these statements, do you know that the same 50 caliber bullets that we fire on the streets of Dallas to disperse people from rioting or people from who's doing considerably what was a peaceful protest that was agitated by the police. We as service members cannot use those rounds in combat. That's why we need to start qualifying and quantifying. That bullet cost about $285 a round. Guess where we buy them from? Israel. Don't even make them where we have the Sierra Army Depot. We don't make them in Alabama. We buy them from Israel. By the short ton. A short ton of 50 caliber bullets that end up on the streets of Dallas, on the streets of Detroit, Chicago, to disperse crowds are made in Israel. If someone gave you a glass from someone else's house and you broke it, how much do you care about the glasses in your house on someone else's broken glass? Exactly. That's why I'm not disagreeing with you or I'm not negating what you're saying. But when we talk about defunding the police, I'm talking about that $1.4 billion equipment budget that was passed in Los Angeles to purchase new equipment is not necessary because the mechanics to maintain the old equipment were laid off. But the price of one of those trucks is the quantifiable pay for 11 years for the mechanic that keeps it running. Why am I saying that? One, I saw this group of young people coming in, so you all are our next wave of voters. I need you to start looking at things. When we start talking about systemic and systematic, your vote is systemic. How you vote is systematic. Stop letting these nonsense people come around you feeding this nonsense to you. Start getting the information. If you don't want a $285 bullet that travels almost 3 miles before it begins to decelerate after passing through concrete. And if we can't use those same bullets at war, why in the devil do I need them on the street where there are women, children, and elderly people sleeping at night when the police say, I'm just trying to make it home at night? Hell, I'm just trying to make it till the next day from you. So systemically and systematically think about how you will vote when you vote. That's why I'm saying I'm disagreeing with you, but I'm not negating what you're saying. Because now I'm gonna leave you with this. One $16 million vehicle can pay all of the teachers' salaries in the state of Michigan for 2 years. Wow, we care more about negating protests, the safety of our women and children, than we do about educating anybody. That's amazing, huh? Just my 2 cents from the peanut gallery.
And I definitely appreciate that because it is all in the wording. We're saying the same thing, we're saying it differently. So I definitely appreciate that. I knew those trucks were expensive. I didn't know how expensive they were. And this is the type of education that we have to propagate. This is the type of information that our young voters need to know. This is the type of information that we need to make nationally known. This is what needs to happen before an election. Right. Because knowing that that one vehicle can pay an entire state's teacher's salary for 2 years, but you choose to buy that vehicle over maybe giving teachers a raise or now we know when teachers are becoming furloughed, it makes no sense at all.
And they do it because they know we're not
exactly what
educated.
we have to do. There is no need for those vehicles on our streets. There's no need for that caliber bullet on it. For what? If a soldier can't use it in combat, why do you need it here? Right. It makes no sense. But this is exactly the type of dialogue that we need. This is exactly the type of dialogue that needs to be broadcast so more people can hear it. So thank you. Thank you for that education so much.
Thank you all. So we're going to wrap. Thank you, Dr. Douglas. He actually is on the next panel also. So we're going to wrap this panel. We are 12:30. This panel was supposed to start at 12 o'clock. We were 15 minutes behind just letting everybody get in on the Zoom, and so we started at 12:15. So we're about 15 minutes past the gap. What I want to say is that we are here for 2 days. This is not just the first day. It is the first day, but we're here another day, all day tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We have vendors on both days. We want people to make sure that they go back to the vendor market when you get an opportunity. We are going to transition to the next panel, which my brother Rashad Bilal is actually going to moderate. I want to see if Jeremiah, if you can bring that stool up here, the high stool, so he can have something to sit on. But the transition and the segue to the next topic is going to be, what can we do and how soon can we do it? That's basically what they do all day long. They interview business owners. They interview people who are continuing to do what is necessary during the pandemic, what's necessary during the times that we have right now in terms of social justice, and people who are making it happen despite the things that we have to keep fighting for. Brother Reginald has the National Reparations Summit. You can look it up online, nationalreparationssummit.org. You can look that up online. But what we want our young people to know, and we want to recognize these young people from Girls in Greatness. Can y'all stand up for 1 second? And their really beautiful shirts. This is one of the nonprofits that developed out of this group right here on this side. One of the nonprofits here in Dallas, the executive director is Lanita Muhammad. Is she out? Oh, there she is. Stand up. One of the new executive directors of a nonprofit. And these are things that you can actually do and get started right now during the pandemic. Make something happen and bring kids to something like this so that they can start learning earlier. What are the possibilities other than just going and getting a job? In the business world, we call jobs just over broke. Just over broke, because that's what you get. You get just enough to make past your expenses, if that. And so there has to be other ways that people learn earlier on. Thank you, guys. There have to be other ways, and there are other ways, and there are plenty of other ways. They're not just other ways, that there are people doing bang-up jobs at those other ways. So our next panel basically is moderated by Rashad, but these are some guys who are doing it, young people who are doing it. One guy who is VC funded recently, Mr. Castley Johnson, is on our next panel, and we can flip that screen to the next panel. He's out there building pathways for people to be able to have home ownership at a young age. We don't have to get to 30 and 40 and 50 years old before we learn how to buy a home. And when we go into the job market or in the career field or into our own business as a young entrepreneur, how do we get one of the first vehicles to wealth? That's home ownership. So My Home Pathways is Mr. Castley Johnson, who's on our next panel. Dr. Douglas, who was just speaking just a minute ago, is also part of our group, but he's a business owner of M7 Logistics, and he has a couple of other businesses. He's also one of the new executive directors of a born nonprofit right during the pandemic called Ndugu Kwa Ndugu, passing that same information on to young boys. These things happened during a pandemic. That's why we know that the examples of resiliency are there, right? We also have Mr. Murphy Cheatham. He's done big things, right? He does whole complexes, whole 150-unit real estate complexes, shopping complexes. And so we want to know these faces. We want to know these people. And we want to know a little bit more about them. But we want Mr. Rashad to talk to these guys and ask them some of the questions he asked some of the people on his format. And that is, what are you doing? How did you do it? Some of the questions that he might have. We want to know who those people are that are out there making it happen and how that can impact the Black community in a major way. So these are some of the examples. We want our young people to listen and take notes. I know y'all have beautiful notebooks in your bags that were provided for you. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rashad. I'm going to ask Dr. Malik Johnson to come up, and we want to thank Mayor Pro Tem Sonia Brown. Can you give her a round of applause for coming out on this busy day? Dr. Malik Douglas, and then Mr. Castley Johnson and Mr. Murphy Cheatham are basically on Zoom, so they're going to be joining us live during Zoom. If we can get a test with them, that would be awesome. Yeah, we got you. We hear you. And I'm not sure that Murphy is on. I do know that he had a family planning with his daughter's birthday today, so he may not be able to join us, but we will share his information on Zoom. So I'll turn it over to you, Rashad, and we can talk a little bit more about business.
All right. Yes, so first and foremost, thank you, gentlemen, for taking part in this. So, yeah, we have a couple of questions that was asked upon me to ask you guys, so I just wanted to kind of get your feedback on a few things that you guys are doing for business. I feel like a lot of times, especially in the business world from different outlets and platforms, a lot of stuff is motivation, but it's like you know, a short-term high. It's like a sugar rush. Like you feel good in the moment. You go to church, you feel good in the moment, but then you come back home and it's like, all right, now you got to actually implement everything that you heard. So with business, a lot of times, like I said, we don't want to just give people motivation. That's part of it. Mindset is part of it, but also like actual steps and actual, like, you know, what are you actually doing? And I think that that's going to help people a lot further, because there's a tremendous lack of information in the world, and especially in our community. So first question for both of you gentlemen, but Malik, since you're here, we start with you. Creating infrastructure and strategic partnerships that impact Black community positively and in a sustainable way. So I guess how have you, or what is your viewpoint on creating partnerships and strategic partnerships? I think that that's something that's extremely important and something that we have to do more of as entrepreneurs and business owners, instead of just working with ourselves, actually, you know, working across and aligning ourselves with strategic partners. So how has that worked out for you?
To answer that part of the question, it actually worked out relatively well. But I want to be able to, like I just said, qualify and quantify. I want to qualify. So a partnership, you can go in and I can partner with anyone. I can go in, I can link up, and we can go out and do a very temporary or existential business agreement and do whatever it is that needs to be done on a short-term goal. A strategic partnership has to be focused on the long-term result with an even long-term gratifying goal. So how I do that is, one, I believe in cooperative economics. I try not to go in and assume too much risk of my own without being able to share that risk. So in starting up M7, Malik 7 Logistical Solutions, all Malik 7 is really me on a computer helping people, helping companies move. And I don't own a truck, I don't own an aircraft, I don't own a watercraft, but nobody likes to do that planning. But in order to get that done in the most cost-effective and most efficient manner, I actually had to start out by reaching out to some of the local operations managers and operations vice presidents for UPS, for FedEx, and different companies. I'm working with other companies like Maersk and things like that for shipment movements, because I actually move people overseas. People who take jobs overseas, they don't know the first thing about customs and things like that, but they don't want to throw all their furniture away. They don't know what types of plugs they can use, but I just bought this computer and television. I don't want to give it up. So that requires me to be up late, sometimes extra early, and I have to call and I have to create these strategic partnerships. And when I say strategic, they have to be calculated in the sense that I know exactly who to call for what. So it's not just a random sort of a McDonald's Burger King decision. It can't be Whopper over Quarter Pounder. It has to be who can move this many short tons, who can move this vehicle in this amount of time without incident at the lowest cost factor. So for me, it has worked positively, but understand that the null value of a positive outcome comes with the lack of sleep. It comes with having to get someone to translate in some cases. I dabble in a bunch of different languages, but it's really difficult when you have to actually reach out and pay someone to translate for you, translate contracts for you. So when you look at strategic partnerships, it's how do I reach that long-term end goal with that positive gratification at the end. And when you figure out what that is and how to get there, now you've just created a strategic partnership.
Mr. Johnson, would you like to chime in on that?
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Mr. Bilal. And so I'm going to kind of piggyback off what he was saying earlier. I think for me, the couple things that I look for are goals, alignment, and incentives, right? And, you know, with that, like, what am I trying to achieve? What's that person or organization trying to achieve? And are those things aligned correctly, right? So you can sometimes see that organizations don't have the right goals that you do, and you have to make that decision, right? Make that tough choice, just because because they're a big organization or somebody that can cut you a big check, if their goals aren't aligned to your particular goals, you sometimes have to walk away from those deals. And I've done that myself. I walked away from $1 million deals because our goals weren't aligned. And I know that I'd be jeopardizing my own internal goals of what I'm looking to achieve. So you have to be able to kind of make those tough calls sometimes. And then again, I think for me, I'm purposeful in supporting folks of my community, right? I'm looking for ways to build something that's not been done before. And sometimes that's hard, right? To find organizations and individuals that can pull what I'm trying to achieve off. And so, you know, for me, it's just expanding my network, right? And getting connected with really smart people that are A1. They're beasts at what they do, and they bring that A game to the table. And then you can align kind of your goals and visions together, and everybody kind of benefits. Like cooperative economics he talks about, if I eat, you eat, right? And we all can eat. A lot of times we're thinking about, hey, I got to take this pie for myself, right? If you mentioned 7 streams of income, if you look at it to divvy up, right, opportunities in multiple ways, I can get a little bit off this, you know, enough in this area. I can get a little bit off this other area over here as well, right? So it's not like the whole pie has to be mine all the time. The part that truly is mine for what I'm bringing to the table, the value I bring to the table, I should have some of that. The part that you're bringing, if you're a real strategic partner, you should have the value of that, right? So that's where you align, is what you bring to the table worth X, Y, and Z, right? Is my effort and my results that I'm bringing to the table worth X, Y, and Z? And if we can have some, you know, you're above board and you bring and understand the value you have and what you can execute on, I think, you know, again, divvying up the pie so we all can eat, right? And if we're all eating and we're sharing, expanding that pie within the community, that's how you bring group economics and collective empowerment, right? So I think sometimes, yeah, we want to kind of get over that HNIC thing where like, I got to be the head boss of everything. Yes, I could be the head boss of my organization, but if we're putting, you know, a couple of really good organizations together, can we all bring some special to the table and empower each other to achieve even more, right? I think that's a thing that I look for in strategic alliances, is get over your egos too, making sure that, yes, you're really good at what you do, but if we can kind of align towards kind of better thinking and bringing something collective, I think we make a really good chance of winning collectively.
I appreciate that for sure. The second question, I'm putting my spin on this because I'm actually interested to hear both of you gentlemen's opinion on this. I feel like in our community, the problem with small businesses is that they stay small. So even, you know, we have businesses in our community, but like there's only so far that a local barbershop can go. There's only so far that, you know, your local bakery can go for the most part. And I think like during COVID, they said 47% of black-owned businesses shut down, which was way more percentage-wise than white businesses or any other ethnic group. My personal opinion, I feel like there's a lot of different reasons for that. Maybe a lack of emergency funds, a lack of government. They didn't get the same SBA loans that other businesses got. But I also feel like maybe business model is an important part of that as well, where a lot of small businesses in the black community wasn't equipped digitally, and they wasn't equipped to really scale because they're just local mom and pop businesses, which is essential on a certain level, but I feel like it's also kind of limiting as well. So how do we create self-reliant businesses or independent businesses, but also businesses that can scale on a larger business? Because that's something that we don't really talk about, I feel, a lot in the black communities, as far as we talk about small business a lot, but why don't we talk about large business? Like, why don't we talk about, you know, businesses that can scale all over the country, all over the world? So what do you guys think about that, as far as the way that we actually look at business, and how do we expand the mindset and expand the blueprint so we're not just stuck to our local community? Malik, you can answer that if you want.
Well, when we talk about economy of scale, and we look at small businesses, I think it's inherently fear. Sometimes we are afraid to grow because we are afraid to fail. And I'm only looking at the American Negro population. I'm not going to say everybody. We are afraid to fail. we won't open a second store because we're afraid of what other people will say if we cannot sustain a second store. We are afraid to go into a larger facility because now the utilities and the other municipalities then double, triple, and we're not afraid. We are afraid that we won't be able to sustain in sales in order to solicit or secure that minimum that we need to keep the doors open, and it will cut into my personal profit. I think we are afraid we are afraid of success in a sense. And I say that because most people will probably say, well, how are we afraid of success? We are afraid of success to the extent that if I do grow, what other people will think of me. So in starting a small business, you have to kind of look at that as if it cannot be the end all be all. It has to be a trampoline or a springboard to the next largest or stronger spring into the next larger opportunity. So when we look at small businesses, if people go in with very small mindsets, that's exactly where they will stay. If you go in with the idea that M7 started on a very small Dell laptop that eventually crashed, and being able to go in and assess that, well, wait a minute, M7 has made me this much. And keep in mind, I still work. I go to work every day. I'm afraid to not eat myself, you know. But when I went in and looked at, man, M7 can buy this very larger computer, this very larger vehicle that I can slap my name on the side of, and oh, by the way, I can operate in 13 different countries, I began to shake loose those shackles that made me afraid to fail. So small business owners have got to go in with the mindset that they're going to grow, period. And one of the things that even as a business owner, we cannot be too wrapped around the axle on what other people think of us, because people will put you in a jar and screw the lid on tight. We're either going to operate outside that jar, or we're going to operate outside the realm of the people we're around. There's a statement that says that we are the sum total of the 5 people around us. Well, I'm sorry. I'm the sum total of the 13 countries in which I operate. So if we keep that mindset that our business is not local, it's not a small business, but it is to be global, I guarantee you a lot of these small businesses won't fail due to fear. Now, it doesn't change economy. It doesn't change being able to solicit for or able to bring people in. We've got to do what it takes locally to get the people in the doors, but we cannot allow inherent fear to let us be only for that neighborhood.
Mr. Johnson, how do you feel about that?
I definitely agree with the fear part, and I can definitely, speak for myself when I was in corporate America and before I made the kind of entrepreneurial jump. And that kind of the acronym that she talked about, I think Oluremi talked about jobs, like just over broke. And so they made me just really comfortable. I was part of being broke, but just comfortable enough so it made me even scared to make the jump, right? Because I know I was walking away from a nice check to be like, let me go pursue something else. In terms of kind of the small business piece, I think there are multiple layers, right? You got to peel back a bunch of onion, like layers on an onion. So there's part of it that's policy related, right? Straight policy, government, local, state, in terms of empowerment zones, who gets money, budgets within, again, state, local governments, corporate budgets as well. That again, if you get a good organization that's plugged in with a supplier diversity set of individuals or customers that can cut you a big check, your first contract, coming in as a small business, that guarantees you money, right, for the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of times that doesn't happen to our businesses, right? So we don't get that opportunity. So again, there's a lot of different layers to it. So I'm gonna say some part of it is policy related at the federal, state, and local government side. A lot of it is a lack of access. And I'm talking lack of access in terms of funding, lack of access in terms of network, lack of access in terms of like partners, right? People that you have a product, they have the need, and you just don't know that those things are there. And if you're not in that network in a certain industry, that you just may not know of, there's an access channel here that it's open. There's 500 customers in this access channel that can cut you $1 million check each. So there's a big lack of access portion that limits our community, and we're not in those conversations, or we're not in those spaces. And yeah, you can go to a networking event and you can meet one person, or you meet a couple of people, but if you're not in that flow of information, a lot of times as a small business, a minority small business, you just won't know about that. And again, I think a lot of times it's, access to capital comes in various forms. So there's loans, there's credit cards, which again, another form of loan, and then there's VC capital. So we got lucky and we were able to, sustain our first VC investment a few months ago. But if you look at that access point, less than 1% of VC funding or venture capital funding, when I say VC, goes to Black and brown folks, right? So that spigot is very, very small. And there are a lot of great minority entrepreneurs that have great ideas or great businesses that could benefit from some VC funding, which again, instead of now interest, I got the person has equity in my company. So they have even inclined incentives to push and open their networks and open their relationships to make sure that we're both successful, right? We tie incentives together. So, those, I think, when you kind of look at a few different layers of where a lot of times, a lot of small business owners just don't know, right? They're a lot of times caught up in the day-to-day grind of getting their business off the ground and keeping it there, right? Of just, accounting, HR, recruiting more people, buying, services, other vendor risk management stuff that they're doing. So their day-to-day is kind of just focused on that. So a lot of times they're not focused on, how do I take this one bakery and create a franchise, right? I got this dope bakery. I can franchise it in Houston. I can franchise it in New Orleans. I can franchise it across the country. What do I need to create a franchise, right? And then who do I get the funding from to make sure that I have the right structure? So if I want people to come in and buy part of my franchise, that I have the capital to be able to do that, right? If you're always just focusing on survival mode, you're never going to get to expansion mode. Right? And I think that's where we are as a people, is that a lot of our businesses, unfortunately, are always in survival mode. We're just trying to make it so that our businesses can sustain themselves and sustain us a little bit, right? Us and our families. Now, how do you take a $500,000 business and make that a $3 million business, right? It's pretty difficult, right? If you're not kind of thinking, if you're not above, your neck is not above the waterline and you're just treading water, that's, I think, where a lot of times we limit, is that how do we get out of survival mode as a people and put ourselves in the best way for expansion? Because that's really, I think, what limits us, is that we're always in survival mode.
Yeah, I agree. And just to add my 2 cents to that, I feel like a lot of issues are, all of our businesses, a lot of times, are brick and mortar. It's limited. I always say all the time, you don't have to have an online business to be successful. But if you don't have an online presence, you're not going to be successful. Meaning, like, we interviewed a gym owner in Atlanta, and he still has a real popular gym, but where his business really scaled to him making $200,000 a month is he created an online fitness program. So now they record videos, and now people pay a subscription of $34 a month, and now it's like daily workout videos, which the online scene, especially in the fitness, is really picked up during COVID because people stopped going to gyms. So now they're working out from their living room. So I just encourage all business owners to try to find a way to duplicate yourself online. To me, that's the lowest overhead. We talk about, like, funding, right? It doesn't really take a lot of money to film a video. It doesn't really take a lot of money to have an Instagram page and really just push it and go hard on social media and YouTube. And you don't need millions of people. You just need a core, loyal support group that grows over time to have a nice income stream. So I feel like there's so many. We interviewed a barber who was teaching other barbers how to do, like, they have the whole man unit thing now, where they put in weaves in men's hair, and it's a booming business. He's teaching barbers for $1,500 how to actually do it. He's duplicating himself online, virtually. So with a dance studio, right? You can have dance classes online. People in Australia can pay $30, and now you're in Texas doing African dances, and they want to tap in, they want to know how to do it, right? So I feel like a lot of times, if you think about it, geographics really limits us a lot because you're only reaching people in a 5-mile radius. But if you expand and you look past and you really look at the whole world as your oyster, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities. That's just my 2 cents on it. But another question, community impact. How do you feel, especially being Black business owners, what are businesses' roles as far as we talk about a lot of like social injustice, things of that nature? Do you feel that business owners have a responsibility to somehow give back or somehow benefit the community? If so, what is that responsibility? And if you guys are doing anything as far as your community involvement, like is that part of your business model? Okay, well, Mr. Murphy, I'll let you answer that since you just joined us. Welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. If you could restate the question.
Yeah, I was saying that we're in a time right now where it's a lot of political unrest and a lot of people are asking big businesses to do the right thing for Black Lives Matter and things of that nature. But what are you guys' thoughts on small businesses, specifically Black businesses? What are Black businesses' role as far as the giving back to the community and having programs in the community and the community involvement? Do you think that is a responsibility of business owners, especially Black business owners? And if you do think that is a responsibility, how do you think Black business owners can play a part in that? And maybe if something that you're doing for your organization, if you want to talk about that, just kind of wanted to ask that.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for having me on here. I'll say that Black businesses do have more of an important role now more than ever. And it's not just necessarily in social programming, but it's also in running your business the right way and being prepared for your business to scale. For businesses, especially profitable businesses, there's no better time for you to raise money than right now, right? So I think more so than what people need as far as another social program is for Black businesses to show people, hey, we're profitable. We're not looking for a handout. We're looking for an investment, and we return positive profitability on this investment, and show other people in our community how to run a profitable business. And that's no matter who's in what elected office, right? I mean, I appreciate, I'm on a group of about 40 or 45 Black commercial real estate professionals. And we all say that, hey, we appreciate America finally waking up to our plight right now, but we've been Black all our lives. So this is nothing new to us. The thing is, if you have been working on your craft, working on your business, and can show that your business is profitable by financials, there's no better time for you as a business to expand. And I think that's what Black businesses could do now more so than ever, is expand and show, no, we're not looking for a handout. We're not looking for somebody to just like us or acknowledge us. We want an equal share of the pie as every other business, right? We just don't want a little share over here that you set aside. We want the full business. We want essentially our unfair share. We need to look at taking over, right? And I think that's what I think Black businesses can do, is show to a lot of our communities.
I'm glad you asked that question, actually. So you'll hear me often use the word inherent. And we as Black business owners, so now here's the school teacher administrator coming out of me. We have an inherent responsibility to our community and those generations after us, that regardless of what happens, I don't care if it's social injustice, I don't care if somebody stole your bike out the front yard, we have an inherent responsibility as a Black business owner, those of us that have reached that level, that precipice of being part of that talented 10th per se, not to be introverted in our means as well as having our means. What do I mean by saying that? As I grow, so does my community grow. as my knowledge base grows, as my wealth grows, then only my community can benefit as I grow, and they will grow along with me. Many of us has heard Master P say in the past couple of months that when I come along, when I eat, my people come along and they eat with me. We have a responsibility as business owners that, especially if we're going to tap into those resources in the Black community, to set aside part of our budgeting annually for support within the Black community. One of the biggest things that I cannot tolerate and I do not listen to is the word they and what they don't do. It is how we support us and take care of us. So in the age of social injustice, right? And I hear everybody saying, oh, well, the government should do this for us and they better do this and we have to get this from the government. I got it. Big Mama paid taxes, Paw paid taxes, your brothers and sisters before you paid taxes, and we've all given it to the government. Got it. That's what fixed the road. How do we fix our own streets? So that Black business owner should be giving back to that public school, just like we were taught in kindergarten when we brought the little candy paper and the cookie paper around, asking everybody to buy candy and cookies at Christmas time to benefit the library. That Black business owner, if they're going to come in and spend that 38% markup on that piece of candy that you paid 30 cents for, and you're going to now have the audacious audacity to charge $1.25 for a Snicker bar. For those of you that are my age, I'm 44. You all will remember when the little brown Snicker package used to cost 30 cents. You used to be able to get them for a quarter, but they cost 30 cents. Now we have the audacious audacity to tell these young folks to come pay $1.25 for the same piece of candy. But then when they bring that cookie paper around to your store, we fix our face and our little mealy-mouthed selves to tell them no. It is our responsibility to give back, not to the cookie sales. No, baby, I'm not going to buy you cookies. What are you trying to do? We're trying to buy new uniforms for the cheerleading team. We're trying to buy new uniforms or shoes for the basketball team. As a business owner, you dig in your pocket, you go to the bank, and you go buy 5 new pairs of shoes. You find out the cost of a uniform. You go buy them dadgum uniforms. You put your name on the box. You put the name of your store inside that school, and you support that school. We stop throwing our money away, giving them to these preachers at church every Sunday, and saying, hey, here go the 10% that you say that the Lord told me I was supposed to pay, and never revert back to Leviticus and the book of Samuel to actually identify what the tithe is for. And then we take that 10% and think we've done enough for everybody, and then turn our back and a blind eye and a deaf ear on the community during our time of need. When these kids come to us and we go to them and we have the audacious audacity to sit back and say, man, they don't have any school books in that school. But we will turn around and open up a Foot Locker, a $1.2 million buy-in for a franchise. Open up a Foot Locker when you could buy that same pair of Michael Air Jordan tennis shoes from Nike for $57 and you'll still sell it for $200, but you'll give Foot Locker a franchising cost, so you could buy that pair of Nikes for $105 and only make $15 off of them in your store and sell them in your neighborhood, and still not give back to the school? Wrong answer. Wrong answer. And the bottom line of it is, what we have to start doing is putting that same demand that we put on Walmart, that we put on Costco, that we put on CVS. We need to put that same demand on Uncle Willie's barbecue shop, on Sister Ann's hairdresser shop, not making excuses for them. Because as a business owner, every time I go home and turn on my lights, I'm spending your money. Every time in my community, I go and I pull out of my driveway, if I'm driving a Cadillac, a Mercedes, or a Pinto, I'm driving your gas. So I have an inherent responsibility not only to the community, but the generations after me to put back so we can then grow that community. It's time out for the excuses. It's time out for the placating our people, saying, well, look, I don't have as much as somebody else, but you have. Give your part. Do your part. I'm not asking you to do everybody else's part. I don't have Sam Walton money. I just don't. But guess what? I can meet Sam Walton percentage of his company like I do my own. If Sam Walton gives 1%, then Malik gonna give 5%. If Sam Walton gonna give 1% to the public school system, then Malik should give 10% to the public school system. Why? Because it's my community. I'm only asking Sam Walton because I think his pockets are a little deeper than everybody else. So as a small business owner, and I'm not a small business owner anymore, actually. SBA, they have a different definition of small business owner. But the bottom line of it is, in my hometown of Benton Harbor, Michigan, a little small town in western Michigan, southwestern Michigan, I have an inherent responsibility that the better I do, the better Benton Harbor becomes. And if we don't start thinking that way and putting those demands on these small businesses, then we will fail. Now, let me caveat this when I'll stop. So I will caveat that with, you don't run to Sam Walton when you can buy that in your own neighborhood. Because if we're asking Malik in his neighborhood to offer an alternative during social injustice and when we're upset, and the next reason we decide to start hooping and hollering and walking down the street talking loud, then if I'm going to offer you an alternative to Sam Walton, then you don't keep going to Sam Walton and then complaining about the same things only because, well, it's cheaper over here with Sam Walton. Every so often we have to hit a trigger that says, I'm going to pay this extra 15% because we want to, and I think somebody said it before, we want to create that where we start affecting their finances. Because yes, as you improve me, I should improve the air around me.
That's powerful. Mr. Johnson, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I think between Murphy and previous guy just jumped on, you guys said the most of it. I think for me, it's hire people from the community, right? As your company or your business becomes more successful, you have an opportunity to hire folks that look like you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to hire the best people for the job at all times. But if I could hire the best people for the job that happen to look like me and have my cultural values and beliefs, and I want to support my community, I try to do that, you know, wherever possible. So you look at most of my company, we're a small startup, look like me, right? And that's intentional because we're, you know, focused on improving a lot of different things, both from our community standpoint and the larger general market. Where possible, donate your time. Volunteer in a couple of different ways. So if you have expertise in financial literacy or financial services, you know, you put on workshops, you know, do financial literacy seminars, whether again it's virtual or in person, whenever that becomes available. And you know, for us, it's also fixing a problem that's prevalent in our community. For us, it's home ownership, right? And that's a huge gap still within the Black community. And it's not just about actually owning the home, but it's the ownership mindset that comes with that. And I think when you got to think about ownership as a mindset, you also got to think of the other side, right? So there's a phrase that I love, like, a fool and his money are soon parted. And as a community, we can no longer be the fool with their money, right? So I think, Dr. Reginald, you're talking about reparations. And one of the things that we have to be very, very critical in terms of reparations, if I cut Black people, let's just throw out a number, $100 billion checks, set of checks, right? Or let's say we throw $1 trillion in there, just for, you know, sake of argument's sake. If I give Black people $1 trillion, but I don't educate the folks on how to use that money well, guess what's going to happen? That money's coming right back to those folks, right? Whether it's through taxes, whether it's through unfair, you know, interest rates that they're going to get charged, and other ways to kind of suck money out of a community. I think that's another thing that we got to think through and make sure that we're prepared for that level of, you know, success. I mean, I'm not saying reparations is success, but in general, like, as a community, as we get economic power, if that was to be one of the ways we got economic power through reparations, or we just became better as a community business owners, with economic power, we got to have the right mindset, ownership mindset versus a consumer mindset. And I think that's where, as business owners, is a huge piece on us as well to change the community's mindset, right? How do we make sure that people, like, instant gratification? And again, I'm kind of going over into a little bit of other pieces, but we got to think long game, right? You know, again, gentlemen there before said it, we got to think grandkids, right? And what the work I'm doing right now, my son is going to be able to kind of eat off of it and be good off of it, but his sons and sons, right? How do we think about, like, that Rothschild mindset? Meyer Rothschild sent his 5 sons across the globe to dominate central banks. Like, people have no idea what that did, right? To that family, as well as to just an entire generation of Rothschilds that came after them, right? So as a community, I think we got to do better in terms of educating each other and changing our own mindsets around an ownership mentality, whether it's business, whether it's homes, whatever it is. It's that piece that's, I think, going to be critical for us in the long term. And that's what I try to do myself.
I appreciate that for sure. So, how we doing time? You okay? All right. So the last question that we have for all of you gentlemen is, what are some best practices that you guys are putting forward right now during the time of COVID? Whether it's maybe brand partnerships, whether it's branding, whether it's media. How are you guys surviving during this time, and what are some tips that you can give entrepreneurs and investors during this time of COVID that you guys might actually be implementing yourself? Whoever wants to jump in, you can just.
I guess I'll jump in. So this time of COVID has been it's been a great time for the business. I'm a commercial real estate broker. Just came on with an international firm, and I focus on multifamily, or commonly known as apartment complexes. And this has been an absolutely wonderful time. I'll tell people that first things first, what I did was cut the mindset off of a scarcity mindset, and that the world was crumbling, that the world was falling apart, right? Because any news media, social media, what have you, will tell you that has fallen apart, right? My goals didn't change. Did business kind of freeze up between February and May? Yeah, absolutely, right? But since then, investors have come back, and it is back being a seller's market in commercial real estate. Now that's in multifamily and industrial. Office and retail was already struggling because everybody was working from home and Amazon was taking over. So the first thing I did was keep all the negativity about my business or about my industry out, and I focus on the details because this world is moving so fast and it's changing so fast, and assumptions that you had last year, what would be profitable, aren't there, but then there are new opportunities that are profitable. So I will tell people to go to the source of information, and then go and reach out to the people who are doing what you want to do, to the people who are where you want to be. Because there's still a lot of money changing hands. There's still a lot of people being successful through this. That's what, from a very high level, again, going and getting too granular and taking up too much time. Those two things have really, really worked out well.
Appreciate that. Malik,
Yeah, I have to agree. But for me, because I'm more or less an army of four, we had to look at rebranding as well as expanded branding and training. So my 4 will eventually become 16 in about the next year or so that we can actually reach regional markets here in the U.S. as well as in North America. But it's where you have to take that level of introspection and say, what are we doing right? How do we do it better? What are we doing wrong? How do we fix it to make sure we do it right? And then how do we come out on the positive side of all things that we're doing right or wrong? And for us, it was just a matter of introspection and deciding what we were going to do. And for us, it's something as simple as buying new laptops and increasing internet speed took us to a new height. We were able to market to different government agencies that jumped right in and said, hey, these are our guys, they have the vendor solution, and this is who we want to work with. So for us, it was about introspection, training, and market rebranding.
Mr. Johnson, want to chime in?
I think for us it's been, really positive, to be honest, especially with the business that we're working in terms of, providing an alternative. And I think also timing in life is actually crazy, right? So you got to be prepared, like put in the work before the opportunity kind of presents itself, right? But when the opportunity does present itself, you got to kind of grab that bull by the horns and go with it, right? So for us, it's like we've been putting in the work. Like again, Murphy's seen some of the work that we've been doing for years, and has been a big advocate of what we've been doing. And again, we were kind of focused on how do we help folks get into homes, and again, from an ownership mentality standpoint. And then you look at from a bank perspective, and that's our banks, mortgage lenders, our big partners. How do we give them more revenue, right, without opening them up to higher risk? And so for us is like, how do we mirror two things, right? Mirror what the consumer or customer wants and mirror what a lender or a bank wants. And, I think that, again, from a timing perspective, when Apple came out with this thing called Path to the Apple Card, and this was in I think end of March, early April, and they came out with this, and it was like immediately opened up investors' eyes and lenders' eyes to exactly what we've been trying to tell people for about 18 months. They were like, oh, you can take higher risk people, unqualified folks, and make them into, better leads for us or better qualified individuals. And we're like, yeah, we could do that. Apple came out with this thing, was like, oh, Apple's doing this. Oh, now we get it. So it literally was like before we'd have to explain to when we're going to investors, like, hey, this is what we're doing. Da, da, da. They were like, yeah, we kind of get it. Now, literally, I tell them Path to the Apple Card. And if you're an investor, it also makes you look stupid if you don't know what Path to the Apple Card is. So a lot of them, even if I think they fake some of it, but they were like, oh, yeah, we get it now. So I think from a timing perspective is like capitalizing on time. Again, the social injustice piece has been big. Because again, now banks are coming out. We got $1 billion pledge to help fight racial inequity, and especially in financial services realm. Because again, that's access to capital, right? Access restricts communities, and you'll see the disproportionate impacts. So now you put $1 billion to this. So Citi, PNC, all these institutions have kind of said, yeah, we want to.
So I just want to hear what kind of businesses they're interested in, so we can find out in our young minds who's looking at what. And then we can steer them which way to go, and we can nurture them into that process. Sometimes you can steer people where they jump all over the process of being in a 30-year job that doesn't give them any pleasure. Why and how do they do that? They do that by getting the skills and knowledge that they need. And so what business would you be interested in?
Well, I'm really interested in franchising businesses.
Franchise. So are your parents business owners? Okay. So franchising, that's a good one, because we have a wisdom sack for you for that.
Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur?
Yes,
what
ma'am.
kinds of things do you like to do? Still thinking about it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'll come back. How about you? What kind of business would you like to own?
A hair business.
A hair business?
I was thinking about having my own scarf business, because we do like wearing scarves occasionally. I don't see like really cute ones for us to wear, especially as the youth. So I wanted to open my own scarf business.
Did y'all hear her? She said she was thinking about a scarf business because they wear really cute scarves a lot of times, and she was thinking about a scarf business. Guess what's out right now? And guess what kind of innovations I've seen over and over on Facebook because of the pandemic? Scarves, right? So you can brand that really easily, and I'm sure we can find one of the gentlemen in the back to give you a pathway for that. And
clothing and accessories.
Clothing and accessories?
Shoe designing and bedazzling shoes.
Shoe designing and bedazzling shoes. Okay, thanks, girls and greatness. Y'all can have a seat. So let me just tell you a couple of things that we'll talk about here in doing that, and I want people to have their phones out so that you can tap into some of these. If you can get your phone, and you all can get your phone, I'm going to tell you where we can continue this conversation on an app that was created specifically for black people. Do you all know an app that was specifically created for black people like Facebook? If you do, raise your hand. Yeah, yes. So we have, and he's actually on that app now. We have an app, but we want you to pull it up. You can pull it up on what is it, iTunes?
Either. Play Store or iTunes.
Play Store or
iStore.
iTunes, and
Yeah,
you all know I'm not the tech-minded person, so I'm just going to say, if you have an Android or if you have an iPhone, you can pull it up. So the app is called Black Life, BLAKLIF. If you can pull that up, BLAKLIF. And the app creator is sitting right next to me, happens to be my brother, Dr. Sean Hubbard. He's going to talk about that a little bit and why he developed that app, what he wants to do with that app, and how we can continue the conversation, this conversation on Black life in a safe space where we're not having to look at all those things that keep us in angst, as Dr. Morales said earlier and some of the other doctors. We don't want to see angst all the time. You know why? Because it stops you from possibilities. Does that make sense? If you're always taking things in all the time, it hinders your ability to think clearly. It hinders your ability to work in a purposeful way. It hinders your ability to have the energy that you need so that you can thrive. And we don't want to just survive in a society that we know is antithetical to who we are as a people. We want to thrive. So instead of just surviving, we want to thrive. And these are the types of tools that we can use. This one is next. FIHANCRA Development Fund is next. So right now we're just with Dr. Sean and Mr. Rashad. But we want to talk about Black life, and we want to, there's no slide for that, so you can just put up a, And Mr. Rashad is going to point us to maybe at least 2 or 3 avenues, or maybe some of the episodes that you can pull up on EYL to address some of the things in clothing and accessories, or, what was the other one? Franchising, because I know I've seen 1 or 2 of your episodes on franchising. And we want you to be able to go dig in on some of those episodes on EYL. So this is an interactive right now. If you have Black Life pulled up on your phone, raise your hand. If you are out there in Facebook world or Zoom world or wherever you are, we want you to be able to tap into this too. So pull up Black Life app on your phone, and we're going to follow along for about maybe 8 to 10 minutes with Dr. Sean, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it, why he created it, and then how we can continue this conversation on State of the Black Race, Black Wall Streets everywhere, and how we can make a Black Wall Street right online.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give a little bit about the motivation behind it. I actually started it a couple of years ago. I really thought that we needed to have our own platform, but I wasn't really sure exactly what we would be doing with it. I didn't really want to just go and reproduce Facebook, really. And so we started developing, and then lo and behold, over the past couple of months, let's say 6 months or so, several months, I saw several clinicians of color, doctors of color, and we were on a doctors group within Facebook. I shouldn't call out Facebook, but that is where we were. And we were on in a doctors group, and they were having a conversation with other doctors, and this was after the George Floyd issue. And so Black Lives Matter, this discussion came up, and basically I would see Black doctors trying to explain why we say Black Lives Matter. And I never really wanted to get in that discussion. I just kept looking at that and shaking my head. And it would be so disappointing to be having to explain why do we say that, and explaining that. And I thought, if I'm in a place where I have to explain that, then that's not really the place that I want to spend a lot of time, So now, from that point, I knew that we needed to have our own platform. Like this is a platform right now, and that's why I'm here, because we want to talk about how we can do better. And we need to be able to have that discussion without all of this interference and all this noise, and explaining ourselves why we want to do better. So in thinking through in what directions we would do better, because I'm a physician and we were talking about health promotion, immediately I ended up going to the determinants of health, the social determinants of health, the same that Dr. Dharma and Dr. Morales spoke of earlier. So it's amazing, Olaremi and I have our conversations, several times weekly, and but she surrounds herself by people that are not like me. When I'm not there on the phone with her, I can see. Anyway, so in thinking through these social determinants of health, and it's not that if we're not thinking about them, they're not there. I mean, we have a social network that we all live with right now. We all have health practices that we are participating in on a regular basis. We might not think about it, but they're health practices and health and medical practices, right? We have an educational system, whether we're in school or not. We have an economic system. Whether we're thinking about it or not, we're exchanging all the time, every day, right? And we have an environment. So these are the social determinants of health. I wanted to be able to talk about these issues and have a place, a platform. It's not necessarily that I'm leading the discussion. I wanted to have a place where we could talk about how we could improve our the system. That way, when crises happen, like COVID, COVID is a crisis. We already had a weak system, and then we had this change, COVID, a pandemic, and then we asked the question, wow, why did this affect us first? Why did it affect us the most? So that's how Black Life was, that's where it came from. That was the motivation. Now, I did want it to have a few more different features. There's a feature called In the Moment, and that is that's kind of like in this moment, whatever we're doing, whatever we're thinking, how are we improving our lives today? How is this meal? What can I do to improve my life? How is this purchase going to improve my life and my situation? What is it that I can learn next? So that's called In the Moment. You'll see that as one of the tabs. And then another is called, it's really like a business card exchange. And so it occurred to me that if I was going to be at an event like this, I was going to be receiving business cards, and then I would get home with all these business cards and then wondering what to do with them. And so I figured that we could have a place where we digitally store all business cards and all pamphlets and things like that. So there's not a reason to carry around paper anymore. It doesn't, it hardly makes sense anymore, So that's what that aspect is. And then there's another section that's just for links that have to do with like videos or articles, things that we would be sharing, very important pieces of information. Yeah, so those are the three functionalities of Black Life, and that's the motivation behind it. So I look forward to continuing the conversation as we leave here. I'm hearing a lot of, I love this, I love the gathering. I love the substance of what we're talking about. Hearing Brother Rashad here and several of our participants. So I'm in New Jersey, and before coming here, I would be having this conversation while I'm brushing my teeth. Or taking a shower or something like that, or going for a walk. I'd be having it in my own head by myself, and so having it here with other people is definitely a lot more fulfilling. It's great to hear that other people are having the same discussions.
Awesome. So how about giving some lessons about how they can reach some of these segments that they want knowledge on Earn Your Leisure, Rashad?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I appreciate that. So. Yeah, especially for the young people, it's actually funny that you said that, because that episode is actually our biggest episode. It hit 400,000 views on YouTube today. This morning I noticed that. There's a young entrepreneur. His name is Trey Brown out of Philadelphia, and he's 14 years old. And he started a clothing brand called Spurgo, and they've just really picked up steam, and all the rappers is wearing it, like from DaBaby to Meek Mill to Fabio Foreign, a bunch of people, and Diddy actually partnered with him. Diddy gave him a grant for $25,000. He opened up his physical location in Philadelphia this summer, actually, not too long ago. So, stories, we try to highlight different entrepreneurs, and that one in particular is one of my favorite, because, a lot of times, especially for younger people, feel like you can't do something because you're too young. Or, you might not have the set blueprint, but there's never an excuse. There's full of opportunity in this world right now and in this country right now. So even though we're in the midst of so much turmoil and we're in the midst of a global pandemic, to see, people still pushing ahead and still making it happen, to me, is extremely encouraging. And that's really what we highlight on our platform from a variety of different people. But yeah, since we're talking about, and then we also had another 14-year-old who does options trading, and he's from Louisville, Kentucky. And his segment also went viral online as well. He learned how to trade options. He's talking about stock options from his mother, and now he actually teaches people. He teaches adults how to trade stock options and how to buy stock options. So for like young people, that's how it all started for us. Earn Your Leisure was actually real financial literacy. My partner was a teacher in the Bronx, And when I went to school, he asked me to teach a financial literacy class for his school. And I went there, and it reminded me of jail. Like I said, look, like you got to go to metal detectors, and there's bars on the windows. The paint is blue, and you can't leave the building until after the school day is over. So I'm like, what are we really preparing children for if at 13 years old? Like this is middle school, they're not even high school, this is middle school. And you gotta go through that just to actually go to school. Like think about like the emotional stress that you have to go through by the time your day is over. So we started teaching financial literacy to kids and young adults. And that's really the root of all of what we have going on right now. So financial literacy is something that we really live and really practice. And I feel like everybody, that's the great thing about business and finances. There's no age limit on it. So it doesn't matter if you're 90 years old, or it matter if you're 10 years old. Everybody can learn, and everybody can better their skills. And the art of making money is not limited. There's no age restriction on making money. So it's extremely important that we learn these things and that we encourage each other and we share stories, and that's really what we try to do.
Awesome. So let me do this real quick. Anybody who was listening, and if you are one of the young people out there, if you were listening and if you pulled up EYL or found it online, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you pulled it up and found it online. Nobody? Okay, let me do a contest then. Let me see who can pull it up. Let me just tell you what we're about to do. This is just impromptu. If you can find EYL University online on YouTube and find, what's the young 14-year-old?
Trey Brown. So it's Earn Your Leisure on YouTube.
Earn Your Leisure. If you can find Trey Brown on Earn Your Leisure and show me on your phone really quickly, you're going to get a free T-shirt off the table back there. So who's the first that can find that? And I want it to be interactive because, yeah, and so there you go. That's Rashad. We really want you all to look this stuff up and not just to hear it, but to engage, because this is where freedom comes from. If somebody else can do it, so can you. If it's up to be, if it's going to be, it's up to me. That's how I live my life every day. Like nobody else is doing what I need to do for myself. I don't get up with a boss every day. I get up bossless for the last 26 years. So if it's going to be, it's up to me. I lay my schedule out. I'm disciplined. I do the same thing that I would do if I were working for someone with my master's degree and 33 hours toward a PhD. I had a hair salon first. My very first business was a hair salon. My hair, I braided myself. I don't go to other people to braid my hair because I still have that skill. And so if you want to learn how to open a braiding salon or a hair salon, and you go talk to somebody who's done that, or you go online and you find that segment where you have people who are in the barber and beauty industry. African American women spend $8 to $15 billion a year on hair care products. Did y'all know that? Billion with a B. There is no shortage of money in the hair industry. We have a shortage of African American entrepreneurs who receive that money. I knew that 20 years ago. I knew that 26 years ago. My very first business I started in 1994. It was a hair salon right in Temple, right on the same street as Temple University where I worked at. And I was a full-time administrator at Temple University, and I made more money in a hair salon than I made as an administrator with a master's degree. When I started seeing how much money I could make as an entrepreneur, it blew my mind and freed my mind at the same time, because there is no shortage of money out there. People have money to spend, and they're going to, yes or no, yes or yes, are people going to do their hair every day? So you can guarantee that there's going to be some money in the hair industry. So this is what we want you to do, is engage in these types of things and pull those tools up that can help you learn the information that you need to know to free yourself out of the structures that keep us back, and free yourself out of the structures that cause us stress. Free yourself out of the structures that limit our possibilities as a people. That's how we get better. Same thing. If we ask for a media, we say we want our own space, then if you have Black Life and you learned how to log into Black Life, pull Black Life up and feel comfortable expressing yourself on an app and a social media platform that is for you, by you. Does that make sense? So we want to thank Rashad and Dr. Sean for tipping off the information about the things that they've created online and the spaces that they've created online for us to be able to thrive, not just survive. And I think that part is important. We're talking about mental health during a pandemic. You heard Rashad say that in his space, people are thriving. The pandemic has been great. Some people have taken their stimulus checks and started businesses, right? Some people have taken their stimulus checks and invested in the stock market. Some people have taken their stimulus checks and invested $149 in his university, which is the annual fee, to learn anything you want to know about any business that you want to thrive in. That's important. $149. How many people like me? I know my brother's receipt for medical school is higher than mine, but my receipt, actually I was a scholarship athlete, but I do have some receipts from school. Who has receipts from school, from college? You still paying on those receipts? Yes, ma'am. So my receipt is way more than $149. And that information frees your mind and frees your ability to become the entrepreneurs that you want to be. So please learn about Market Mondays. That is a platform that's live and well every single Monday. You'll see Rashad's face on there because he's one of the people and one of the partners that started EYL and Market Mondays. And please see Black Life, because we're going to keep this conversation going on beyond today on Black Life. So that being said, please give them a round of applause. That wraps up our business segment and our last closeout segment, which we will only take about 20 minutes on because we're coming up on 2 o'clock. I want to call all the FIHANCRA, y'all can, thank you so much. Thank you. I want to call all the FIHANCRA development partners up. So that would be Micah Ware, Tanisha Shorter, Monica Washington, Lanita Davis Muhammad, Brother Najee Muhammad, Brandon Muhammad, Dr. Mark, Dr. Malik, and Alan Washington. We're going to come and let you see how this particular effort got started, and I'm just going to turn this last segment over to Dr. Malik. So we want to stand here together because we have to, Josh said we need to stay within it. Come in a little bit. We're going to, and Alice Wells, Anthony. Let's see if we got everybody. We're waiting on Anika and Lanita. See if we have everybody. I just want you to, and Brandon. We want you to see how this particular effort got started. So, and one of our young partners, he has a full position. Come on, Marion. Marion Washington is an investor in this business. He has a full investment certificate just like the rest of us. His mom added him as a partner because this is a cooperative economics organization. We basically pool our money together, FIHANCRA Development Fund here in Dallas, Texas, but we operate globally. We pooled our money together, and we have other partners who are not here. Some of them are in Italy in the Army, some are in other states, but we have pooled our money together to start creating the impact and the solutions that we want to see. Charles, come on, Brother Charles Jackson. Yeah, man. Yeah, so we have, what we've done during a pandemic is we said, hey, what if people came together during a pandemic and put their money together and started creating the solutions that they wanted to see? Some of those solutions look like pooling our money together every single month and creating those t-shirts on the back, which are $15, which we hope you grab on the way out, and making a scholarship fund out of those t-shirts every single month of $1,000 that goes to a different HBCU every month. The first one started out in the name of George Floyd, called the George Floyd Scholarship for Social Justice, which is instituted now at Grambling State University for a criminal, Grant fam, for a criminal justice student, 3.0 or higher. You know, it's a non-endowed scholarship, so they can use it however they want. They don't have to use it on school. They can use it on books. They can use it on food. They can use it on themselves, whatever they need. We just want to assist. The second one is being instituted at Southern University in the name of Breonna Taylor. So the Breonna Taylor Scholarship for Social Justice and Freedom is at Southern University. The next one will go to Florida A&M down in Tallahassee, Florida, where my son is a student, my brother's son is a student, and where my brother graduated from undergrad. We're going to continue around every single HBCU until we hit them all, and then we're going to do it again and again and again and again. So we're starting an endowment that will help grow that money and help us continue to do other things outside of the scholarship fund. And it takes money to do those things, like Rashad said. It takes money to do just about anything, but are we going to wait on other people to get that money? No, we pooled our money together during this pandemic. We started out small and humble, and we're going to grow that effort out to 100 partners. Right before Miss Sonia Brown left, the Mayor Pro Tem of Glen Heights, she asked how she could be involved as a partner in this group. That's the kind of impact that we are having. And this is a small example of one of my favorite quotes and monikers, and you'll see this on some of my business stuff. When the ripple understands that it is the wave, and when the wave understands that it is the ocean. Do y'all understand that? So the ripple effect on how you can start small and continue to grow and grow and grow, we want to make sure and ensure that these young people actually get to see their dreams come alive. So we're going to take and nurture them over time until that happens. So I just want to let them go down the row. I didn't tell you everything because Mark is going to cover that. Dr. Malik is going to cover that in this last wrap-up segment. But I want everybody to introduce themselves and what you do. And then when we get to the end, he's going to take over, and Brandon Muhammad is going to stay up with him. Anika is going to stay up with him. And they keep trying to, and Alice Anthony, who was slated to stay up here, who doesn't. This is my college roommate from freshman year. She's going to stay and talk to you as a mom, as a social worker, and as a lay person about what it means to be in Phi Hankra. So we're going to have 3 people stay, but everybody go ahead and introduce yourself and tell them what you do.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, right. Okay, I'm your brother, Chef Brandon of the Cook to Live Posse and the Chef Brandon Buttermilk Bean Pie, which, by the way, we do have some in the back.
Yeah.
But what we do in terms of Cook to Live, we teach you how to cook foods that give you life. We teach you how to eat to live and not live to eat. And when you start doing things proper in accord with your nature and the atmosphere, then your body reacts differently. And so part of the reason why, and I use myself as a testimony, but it's part of the reason you look at me and you couldn't tell that I have 4 children in college. One graduating in November and another one graduating in the following spring from the Grambling State University.
Yeah.
Thank you. Saying that to say that when you eat proper, you don't age the same, okay? And most of us have this fear of getting older once we become adults, because when we were younger, we wanted to be grown, but once we got grown, we found out the responsibility with it. Well, part of the responsibility is eating properly. And so when you all come see us and you visit us, we'll help you with that.
Hi, I'm Lanita Davis Muhammad. I have my mentoring group right here, Girls in Greatness. Ages 13 to 18, just helping them build successful futures.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanisha Shorter, but a lot of people know me by Nikki. I am an educational consultant with From the Heart International Educational Services.
Good afternoon. I'm Monica Washington. I am a member of FDF, and my profession is financial accountant for Texas A&M College of Dentistry.
This is not my spouse. We just happen to be next to each other. Because my wife might see this like, huh? My name is Alan Washington. I'm an educator, head football coach, middle school, entrepreneur. Wear a couple of different hats in that arena. Hadn't found the niche, more of a solution specialist. Very busy over the summer, and this season been very, very busy. Met this lady a few years ago, and I saw a vision. I've seen her success, so I jumped aboard on this opportunity to roll with her, and it's been a good ride so far. I know it's gonna get even better.
My name is Marion Washington. I'm 13 years old, and I go to school at Uplift Luna.
Yeah. And he's learning about investments early on. I'm Olaremi Sano. Y'all know that. Here we go.
Malik Abdullah. I am the founder of and president of Ndugu Kwa Ndugu, which is Swahili for brother to brother. but it is a organization for young men that will create a rite of passage that will once introduce our young men to becoming real men at the end.
I'm Charles Jackson. I work for Najee Fragrance International.
Good afternoon. I'm Micah Ware, and I'm a special needs educator.
Good afternoon. My name is Alice Anthony, and I am a retired social worker / now currently working as an educator.
Good afternoon. My name is Najee Muhammad. I'm owner of Najee Fragrances International, LLC. I am thankful to be here amongst my partners, and I'm glad to see everybody's out. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Anika Maiden. I am a second grade teacher. I've been an educator for 20 years now, and I love teaching second grade. I was a special ed teacher as well, and I taught autistic kids for 7.5 years. And I'm so great to be here this afternoon.
Awesome. Y'all give them a round of applause. And we're going to wrap up. You can give that to Dr. Malik. We're going to wrap up by just letting Dr. Malik talk to Brandon, Chef Brandon, and Sister Anika, and Alice Anthony, about FEHANCRA Development Fund and what they've experienced so far. We're going to talk about our community garden and a couple of other things, and then we'll wrap up.
So good afternoon. Good afternoon. So let me start by saying, because I don't want anybody to walk away from here and say, oh, why did he embarrass that young man like that? I know my brother Brandon can definitely attest to this because he and I have spoken several times about it. If we don't start praising our young people, if we don't start making our young men become resolute, stand upright, get them hands out their pockets, start looking other men eye to eye, and standing with some level of assertiveness, they will cower under pressure, and you'll still keep asking the question when our women are being hurt in the streets, where are our men? That young man at 13, guess what? If it didn't start today, I guarantee you every time he sees me, he gonna make me stand up straight. He gonna make me take my hands out of my pocket. He gonna make me say my name and look him square in the eye, because that's what a man does. We forgot those hard-knuckled old men that were shade tree mechanics, that when they shook your hand, that middle knuckle hurt your whole arm. We forgot where those men came from. And if we don't start getting our young men under control and back to where we came from when we know better, you can say I'm mean if you want to, but I guarantee you the young men that come out of Ndugu, you're going to be able to trust and know that no matter what it takes, they will always be a man. So I'm going to leave it at that. So what I'm going to do is introduce my brother, my friend, my classmate from Grambling, from the Grambling State University. The Grambling State University. Chef Muhammad hails from Los Angeles, California, where he has a very interesting story that led him to Grambling. Played in the Grambling band, not very good, but he played in the band. Hey, when you got 200 people in the band, you don't have to sound too good. But this brother here has taken the simplest thing we can do to ensure longevity. And that is taking food directly from the garden and putting it on the table. Now this brother, I hope he don't tell us how to shop for food, because he gonna tell you the equation for buying by the ounce. I don't care to hear that again. My mathematical skills are not that good. That's why I went into liberal arts. So I'm hoping he doesn't tell us that story. But Chef Brandon has a lot to tell as far as being an accomplished chef. He is the nutrition consultant for American Airlines here in Dallas. He was contracted to open his own kitchen for them out at DFW. You all, Chef Brandon is probably one of the most profound gentlemen I have ever met, not because we share a relation in our religion, but because this brother here has shown me the way through so many different ways just by action alone. Chef Brandon.
Try to figure out who he's talking about. That probably, honestly, is probably one of the warmest introductions I've ever received. And knowing the brother, you can hear it, it's really sincere. So a few things. One, I do have to make a correction. Am I good? Okay. I do not have my own kitchen there, right? But doing the work, there was work that was being done there with the American Airlines through one of the contractors. And so in that process, a lot of great things came out of it. I can say that, including free travel for me and my family, and we love that. But as Brother Malik stated, that in terms of my role with the Fahankra Development Fund, it just became an organic role in terms of timing. And, you know, there's a saying that says time dictates the agenda. And so we might want to do something, but if you do the right thing, and it could be done the right way, but if it's not done at the right time, truth out of season doesn't bear the proper fruit. So all of this, it was easy for me to raise my hand and say, farming? God, yes, me, because it was something that I've been longing for years. And I say that all the way from a little boy. One of my earliest memories of understanding the value of food in our community was when I was a little boy. I was about 7 or 8 years old, and my mother, my sister and I were in the car, and we're rushing trying to get to the grocery store before they closed. If you all have ever been to the Los Angeles area out west, there was a grocery store chain called Alpha Beta, and we were trying to get there before they closed. And the clerk closed the door as we were walking up, and I remember walking back to the car telling my mother, I said, Mama, one day, I'm going to open a store, and we're going to be open all the time, you know, because I was like, man, we just needed this one thing. I don't even remember what she was trying to cook, but the fact that we couldn't get in. And so for me, it was important that we as a community have what we need in terms of food without relying on somebody else to give it to us. And that was something that my mother instilled in me. And so farming, when we think farming, I understand as black people in America and in the Caribbean and in South America, oftentimes we try to stray away from it because we were forced into working farms for free labor. And, you know, if you understand DNA, you understand that there's some things that are passed on in your DNA, not just the way you look, you know, and someone would say, you act just like my grandmama used to act, you know, or whatever the case. You also take on the characteristics. And so many of us as descendants of those who were forced into slavery and worked on these plantations, they couldn't wait to leave. And so now today, many of us have zero desire to return. But if you notice that the farmers right now today, if you look at in general, they're not struggling. It was said once to me that one day farmers will be driving a Lamborghini while everybody else is walking. Why? Because they'll be the source of food. If you don't want to grow food, we also have things that you can grow like cotton. There was an old saying in the South said that cotton was king. Why? Because they could take the cotton, grow it, and ball it up in the lint and sell it to companies, and now they're producing clothes for us. The things that someone else will give a name to, and we can't wait to go get the Gucci purse or the Gucci belt or whatever it is because it's popular now. But it all started at a farm, whether it was leather or whether it's cotton. So part of the work, and I'm going to pass the mic, but part of the work is that to get us understanding that independence and land and farming is a very strong vehicle that's going to drive us into our future.
Oh, no, you get you an introduction, too. Now, this sister came in to Fahankra along with Oloremi, calling me, and let's do a Zoom, let's get online, and yada, 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 and would never say a word. Everybody's got that aunt. She's typically like the middle child, but she won't say much. But when she does, it's by far the most profound thing that's ever said, and it just shuts the whole room down. Anika comes to us with years of education, years of educational experience, and now entering back into the academic arena at a time our children need us the most. And she affected our children when she first came into the academic arena as a social worker. So being the father of 2 autistic children, I can understand how that social worker, I can understand how those counselors are needed in our schools. And then, oh, by the way, someone addressed it today, that our police department don't need to hire more police. We need to hire more counselors. We need to hire more social workers. Now, I'm just telling you all something. If you all ever want to see me go to jail, let my child be the next hashtag. I have a child that's 3.8 on the 5-point scale of autism. Let my child be the next hashtag. I guarantee you, no one is safe. I'm just letting y'all know that up close. No one is safe, okay? You don't have to worry about going to court. You're not going to wait 180 days to see if they're going to be charged. You're going to say, oh, dadgummit, Dr. Malik's child is dead. Everybody lock the door. Because we know he is a different type of crazy. But now I'm going to call Anika so that she can talk me down Alice, for a few minutes, just so she can talk me down for a few minutes. Okay? So she can talk me down for a few minutes. But I'm going to call Alice and say, hey, somebody done got my child. And so she going to say, Brother Malik, now, baby, now you know. That's how they always start it. Baby, now you know. But I want her to tell you about her role in Fahankra, but not just Fahankra, what has been her role in dealing with our community and getting our children into that safe space, into that quiet space, so that they can think about developing a business, growing beyond just having a job and just working.
Wow. Okay, first of all, I joined due to Olarami calling me and said, hey, we always referred to each other as roomies because we were roommates for several semesters in college. And we remained in contact with one another since the 90s when we graduated. I'm telling our age here. But a little bit about me. I've been a social worker for the last 28 and a half years for the state of Louisiana. And came December, I just started looking around at things changing, and I went and I said, you know what, I want to enjoy some of this retirement before, something happened. I had a friend who was due to retire on September 16th in 2018. He was due to retire September 30th. He died September 16th at his job. And that almost like traumatized me, and it started me to thinking that I should look to using some of this retirement wisely. So I did. I retired from the state, but however, I'm not the kind to stay at home and do nothing. So I was hired as a contractor based on they had heard some things about me, and they were saying we could use you on our staff. So I joined what they call an impact team. And what we do, we work with kids who are been victims of crime, and they didn't hire me as a social worker. They hired me as an educator because I had experience in working with kids in the school system. So it has been a journey since January to now. And I felt like I still wasn't doing enough. So when she told me about this, I told her, I said, you know what? I'm going to do it, and I'm going to stick to it. I said, I want to be a part of something. I'm not looking to get rich quick because, a lot of times when you get into these things, you want the money to start flowing right away. And I came in knowing that it would not flow right away, but I felt like I'm a part of something. I felt like, being able to contribute toward a scholarship. I mean, because when you're in college, somebody give you some money and tell you you can do what you want to do with it, and you don't have to pay it back, that's a good feeling. And that feeling came all over me, so I decided to do it, and I have really enjoyed it, and it's very rewarding because I feel like we're making a difference. And seeing all these businesses coming out of this development fund, it really makes you feel good on the inside. So it's been a journey, and I enjoyed it, and I look forward to more things happening.
I'm about as bad as Steve Harvey. Make sure I get your name right. I don't want to butcher no more names. Anika, there we go. See, I had them mixed up. Alice, Anika, see, it's all the same when you got scrambled brains like mine. So, look, anybody been in a classroom, you got that kid that's always, ooh, 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 ooh. Anika came on board 100 miles an hour. First night she jumped onto the Zoom, had 100 questions, answered 99. and ain't heard from her since. But there are some people who, in my mind, I call them our silent assassins, right? Because they don't have to speak up unless for their presence to be felt. Sometimes they let their money do the talking. Sometimes they let their actions do the talking. That's Anika. We don't have to hear from her every Sunday to know that she is working, because her actions, when we publish how we got to the end result, not by alphabet, Anika's name is at the top. Who contributed? What did you do to contribute to the process? Who was one of the heavy lifters? So when you have this type of person in a cooperative economic situation, those are the people who are actually the doers. We always look to the CEO to be the voice, but the doers are those people who work down in the factory at the VP of operations level, who is ensuring that factory production is on point, it's on key, things are getting out of the factory and into the warehouse and onto the shelf on time. And that's Anika. That's our ooh kid in the back of the room, right? So I'm gonna let her tell you a little something about herself, and then we're gonna get into 3 questions. I'm gonna ask each one of y'all one question, different question. I'm not gonna throw the same question at you. I'm not that simple, right? But I want you to think about it before you answer, and then I want you to give us your most heartfelt answer.
Well, hello, once again, my name is Anika Maiden, and I'm just overwhelmed with all of the things that we just feel great about being here today, because when Ola Ramey first made the call back in April, and she said, well, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about, creating this? This is the outline. And I was like, yes, I'm excited. I'm on board right at that moment. If you really don't know Ola Ramey, she's a person that has had many businesses. And I remember when she moved back to Dallas and she had her dance studio, and how she opened up her studio to so many people. She gave so many people an opportunity to come into her establishment and grow. And that's one thing that I loved about her. She gave everyone the opportunity to come in, grow, show their craft. Didn't matter what business you had, if it was something great that was going to benefit the people of the community, she would allow you to come in. And her dance studio was awesome for children. So whenever I do things, I always keep children in mind, because I am a teacher, and I know there are a lot of programs that aren't available to kids, because I have a son. And I always keep special needs kids in mind as well. So when she brought the opportunity to everyone on the platform to be a part of it, I was really excited about it. So I had to think about those like-minded individuals who want to be a part of it as well. Because generally, you think about things that you want to do, you think about things that are needed, but you're like, how can I get started? So Ola Ramey was thinking about it. I mean, she brought it to our attention. I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I was thinking. So here is now my opportunity to be a part of something that's great, that's going to make a difference in the community, and that's something that I wanted to do. And to see where we are right now is absolutely amazing. If you think about from April until now and how our group has grown tremendously, and all of the individuals that she had here on the panel today to talk about things that were greatly needed to be discussed. I really commend her for that. And this has given me an opportunity to think about other things that I thought about. But we have people, a part of our team, who are very educated. And if you have a question about things, they can actually answer those questions as far as financial literacy or investments and things like that. So I'm really grateful that she has given us the opportunity to be a part of this great development fund. I love the direction that we're going in, and a lot of the individuals that she's put in our presence that are very well educated and can inform us of some things that we need to know. And I just want to say, Brandon, I'm glad that he's a part of the team, because when you think about gardening and how you want to start, growing your own foods and things like that, you need someone like that in your space. You need someone like that, because we need to get back to healthy living, healthy eating. I grew up with gardening. My grandfather had a farm. My grandfather, we had a garden. So all of those great things. It's glad to get back to someone who actually still living that life of gardening and telling us about healthy food, healthy eating, and how to plant. So these are some of the great things I just want to share about why I'm excited about being a part of the Fiancre Development Fund, because of the individuals. And I actually love them because we are family. I do believe that. I believe that we are a family, and I can't wait to see the success for where we're going from here.
Thank you. So I was told, right? So I got that cue card that say, Dr. Malik, you and Brandon had got to cut it short because, you know, you and I can talk. So that's all right. When they leave and cut the mic off, you and I will talk. All right? But let's try to keep our answers brief. All right? So, Alice, I want to ask you a question. How does the Fiancre business model, when we talk about collective and cooperative economics, yes, ma'am, we talk about cooperative and collective economics, how we came in and decided that a set dollar amount would be our investment, but we have learned that over time our set dollar amount tends to be a little greater than our set dollar amount. How does our incubator become necessary to our community when we look at it from an educational standpoint of teaching the generations behind us?
Well, the first thing is the mindset of coming together. And for us, it's been really hard for a lot of people. And being consistent, that's the word I use most often, and that we don't stick to stuff. And in order for it to work, it may not start off like we want, or we might not get everything we want, but we're aiming for the same thing. So as educationally, and I say this to y'all might say this is so boring, but when you get up and you get into that world and you're gonna remember this conference, and you're gonna say, I learned that then, and now I understand what those people were talking about. So coming together, start thinking of what you wanna do with your lives right now, and then start looking at how you're gonna put it into place. So educationally, you cannot educate yourself enough about how to start your own and what kind of problems or what kind of benefits you could get from starting your own business. So start thinking about that.
All right, so, yes. Ms. Maiden.
Yes.
Based on what we've created as a centrifuge in FDF, how can FDF actually support what it is we teach in public education?
I would say, because with what I was thinking about is basically creating a space for the children in our community to learn more, because we have some kids, we have a lot of children that are homeschooled, correct? Yes. So I think it would be great to create a space for those children, for those parents who need that extra education for their children, because we have a lot of children that are struggling in the education system, and they're being passed on, and we don't want to see that. So with our community, with our development fund, I think that we can create a space where the parents can have somewhere for their kids to come and get that extended education. And that's something that I look forward to doing. We're always looking for extra tutoring, extra books, just something that will help get our kids further than where they are, because a lot of our children are being missed. They're slipping between the cracks. So I think that it will create a space for our children to get that extended education that's needed. And I truly believe that. And I think for the parents, even those parents that are up to par with what things that are needed in the education area right now, I believe that we would have those individuals that could also help them to help their children, because that's a lot of things that I've seen that's absent in the education community, especially in our schools. We have parents that aren't aware of what's needed, what the children need to learn, or the new math, the new things that's needed. So we have those people that will come in, those individuals to come in and help them to educate themselves and know how to educate their children and help them as well.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Chef Brandon, you're going to close us out, all right? So my question is more directed towards what you're doing with the community garden. What benefits do you expect to see on a graduated 3 to 5 year plan for Fahankra development in Glen Heights to actually come out of our community garden?
One thing that if we paid attention to pretty much every one of us that came up here, everyone has a background in education. I didn't mention mine, but I do as well. Have taught in the classroom. I was a Western Regional Director of the Muhammad University of Islam, which was there's private schools, all over the country. But the point I'm making is one of the subjects that most of us run from at a certain point is math. And if you realize that when you're doing math, that when you have an assignment, at the top there's normally what's called an example. And it shows you how to work out the problems. It gives you the just the basics of what you need to work out all the rest of the problems that come with the assignment. The Fahankra Development Fund, using our community garden, and my wife can tell you, I stopped calling it a garden, I call it a farm, because we have to change our mentality. When we think garden, we think something small in the backyard, but this room here can actually be a garden, but it will be a farm to others. And so it is still farming. For us in 5 years to be able to show that we can grow food, we can harvest the food, we can eat the food, we can continue to grow the food and continue that process. It's only the microcosm of the macro. It only takes one example for the people to see that, oh, this really works. What we're finding in the gardening and farming, planting food, and I'm getting ready to wrap up. There are principles in life in itself that when we start understanding that first you must plant a seed, and you have to go into this place where we say it's dirty, it's a lot of dirt, I don't want to be in dirt. And an older, wiser man told me on his farm, he said, keeping your hands in the soil keeps you young. It keeps you youthful. He said, because everything that's in the soil is we're made up of in our bodies. He says, so the good soil, keep your hands in it and farm your land. Farming the land also, owning the land that you farm also shows independence, okay? In life, you can only get so far. Even a baby bird, the mother after a certain point said, you ain't flew from this nest, just gonna push the baby out. And so now gravity takes over. There's a law that's in effect. And so you have to do what you know is natural for yourself. We're being that example. It is natural for ourselves to say, I'm not going to keep letting you hit me upside the head before I block and hit back. So how do we block and hit back? Well, we've been hit financially. We've been hit with real estate. We've been hit educationally. We've been hit in the food. They call these food deserts, meaning there's really no good food. All of those things can actually take place on your farm. Your schooling, your education, it doesn't matter the field. It can be engineering, farmer, agriculture, medicine, whatever. All of that can take place on the land that you own. So our example of having ownership of the land, using the land properly to get what we desire out of it and be able to continue, we're working towards generational success. So none of us are involved in this thinking about what we can do for our children. We're thinking about our great and great-great-grandchildren and hope that one day, like Thurston Howell III, he knew who his grandfather was because he didn't just leave him his name, but he left him something. He left him a business. So many of us don't know our great-great-grandparents' name unless we research them because they didn't leave us anything. So the Fahankra Development Fund, we're going to leave you something.
Well, I would like to thank you all, but I want to take a little liberty, okay? So just bear with me for 2 to 3 minutes, okay? Because I know we've talked about medication, we've talked about doctors and their roles as far as the black community, we've talked about money, we've talked about business, we've talked about everything. But there's one thing that we left out, and there's a discussion about holistic medicine. Because there was a sister who got up here and she said, if you can get the vitamins you need directly from the food that you eat, you can combat a lot of things that come with COVID, okay? Now, I done added a few of the 19 in front of COVID, okay? So I'm not gonna talk about nobody. But there's a sister here that was just talking to me about holistic medicine and self-care and how that can best benefit us. And she and I had a very good conversation for about 10 minutes. And she asked me as a teacher, as an administrator, how in the world do I feel about these kids going back to school? And I told her one thing that bothered me about sending our children back to school is that our buildings will still be filthy and that the food we feed these children is completely wrong. So I want to take a little license for about 2 to 3 minutes and give her an opportunity just to talk about holistic medicine, not to negate all of the toxic pills on the street, okay? I'm not doing that. That's just how I feel. But I'm not talking about not taking pills and medication, but I want everyone to know that there's an alternative to just pushing pills and treating and streeting medication, okay? There's a way that we can manage ourselves even at home before we get to the doctor and give them a very lukewarm diagnosis of ourselves. Come on, sister.
Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Well, I feel I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Queen Abena. I'm the goddess of wellness. I've been working in the holistic healthcare industry for over 30 years. I am, right now, I've been asked just to be brief because I will be here tomorrow as well, and I will explain a little bit more about the global holistic movement. That is where our collective, the mission for our collective is to work together in collaboration with fellow practitioners to heal our community, to offer resources, education, services, because the only way we are ever going to be effective in our community is if we could start in our own communities, healing our communities. So I am putting out a plea to any practitioner to reach out to me, call, email, text, but reach out to me. I'm asking everyone to look at texting My Health is Wealth to 22828. We are in the process of creating a platform, and I like being able to get the input from everyone on how we can make this happen. I've worked in the community with individuals one-on-one, but I've also worked to create different retreats and a holistic festival, life and wellness parade. So I've done quite a bit of stuff out in the community, and now I want to bring us together as a collective and start healing this community. So that's why I'm here, and I really am thanking Oluremi for allowing me this opportunity. So text 22828, My Health is Wealth, all caps, one word, and please let us pour into you, because we need a healthier community of people. We need to educate. We want to educate you. I've been working in the community. I look forward to working with each and every one of you to heal our communities. We have to heal our communities. We have to reach in our communities. So thank you for this opportunity. I will be speaking a little more in depth about this tomorrow with Oluremi. So tune in tomorrow, okay? Thank you again.
Thank you. I got it. So y'all, thank you for hanging around for the entire day. We are going to wrap up the State of the Black Race Business and Wealth Day 1. We are going to bring it to a close, but we will be here tomorrow. We're going to be here all day, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. with DFW's finest fitness and dance instructors. You have a variety of classes from ballroom fitness with Tag. Come on up here with me. Y'all, she is just a beautiful spirit. I'm just telling you. I'm just going to give her a hug. Because she's just amazing and has made it through a lot right now. I know just right now she has some news that she just received. So it's like, do you ever notice people who are in like a little body but just have so much strength and spirit? That's who she is. And I know she takes it out on the dance floor. Like anything that comes her way, she can dance it out. She can teach it out. She has struggled through this pandemic and keeping her business alive. So I want to do something. One thing is we're going to give her some type of donation. And I'm telling you that she knows that I'm here for her. I've actually done everything from buying extra toilet paper rolls to extra. I've been a dance studio owner before, and I've been a community business owner, and I know how it is. I actually come in here with whole rolls of paper towels, whatever I can do. You know, money, if we need money, we make it available to help out with bills and things like that. And it's important for us to do that and support black businesses because that's how we stay alive and thrive. So I asked her to come up here with me. I know she didn't want to at first, but I definitely appreciate it. And I want her to feel the love, right? I told her today, I said, I might end up passing the hat like they do in the black church. Because, what's your Cash App?
Click Studios.
Click Studios with a Q, C-L-I-Q-U-E, Studios with an S. So if you want to Cash App something to her, and I'm going to do it myself, you can do the hashtag with the $ Click Studios, and we're going to put a donation together for her. I have a party here later on for my birthday, and we're going to do the same thing. Anything that comes in on that, we're going to give back to this studio. We could have had this conference anywhere, but I told her that we wanted to have it here. We thank Ninja Pro's AV team. Please give them a round of applause. Y'all, it's all relationships. Relationships made this happen. The reason why I want to thank Josh and his team is because without them, none of this stuff would have happened. Definitely not any of the technical stuff. We stay on the artist side, the creative side, like the side that cannot plug in the, that. So the thing is, we want to thank TAG and Click Studios because we'll be here tomorrow again, day 2. She is actually teaching a ballroom fitness class if you're interested. Those people out there on Zoom and virtual. We know that it is going to be a lot more probably people here tomorrow because some of the dance instructors are bringing their bass with them. So we have Elka Flowers from Flow Fitness Studio in Grand Prairie. The owner is coming with her bass. We have Jessica Simone, Stiletto Heels class. Anybody can come to that if you're a beginner or advanced. We have My African Dance class, which will be 1 to 2 tomorrow. So we're going to have live drummers. We have drummers from all over the city coming in tomorrow. And then we have a fit feast with Chef Brandon. So you got to Ebony's food was amazing, was it not? If you got a chance to taste her food, that was all vegan. So tomorrow we have another vegan fit feast with Chef Brandon. But we have people like Legion Elahi, one of the best hip hop dancers in this city, will be here. He dances with people like Lil Wayne and all those folks out there. Erykah Badu, he teaches class here in Dallas. He'll be here with his bass. We have a brother by the name of Junior Oliver who's going to be teaching family fitness and protection because it is extremely important for us to protect our families in a hostile society. Would you agree? And then we have a couple of more instructors like Tamara Jenkins. She created her own fitness platform called Sculpt and Groove. She's going to be here, and a couple more people. So without further ado, we're going to wrap it up for today, but we thank you for taking your time. You could have been anywhere in the world. You chose to be here with us on Zoom, in person, the doctors, the business panels, the fitness folks who will be here tomorrow, the vendors. Please stop and see the vendors. They'll be here tomorrow again. And we thank you, Girls in Greatness, our young people, for coming out. Thank you, people on Zoom and on every live platform. Did I miss somebody? Yes.
And thank you, Olarimi.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, guys, that's it. Thank you so much. We'll wrap up here, and we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m. Same place, same bat channel.